All right. I'm calling to order the April, say, 10th meeting of the Long Hill Township Committee. I'll start the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Committeeman Maringolo?
Here.
Committeeman Ray?
Present.
Committeeman Schuler?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Pasurcia?
Present.
Mayor Dorsey?
Here. We'll skip down. So we have visitors from the high school today, so we'll start with the presentation from the high school budget. Floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you so much for inviting us to join you. We know that the townships don't vote on the budget anymore, but we do like to come and just share with you the highlights. We know it's very scintillating and everyone waits with bated breath every year. But it also is just a nice chance for us to come and talk to you once a year with some of our board members. We have our board president with us, Peter Fallon, and we have two of our board members who are from Long Hill, Susan Ober and Rita Barone, and our business administrator, Tim Stiles, who you all know is also here. So our projected enrollment for next year is 2,017 students, so we're staying pretty stable over the next couple of years. And the second item on the handout that we gave you is something that I really commend the board for staying committed to. Prior to my arrival in the district 6 years ago, the board had already committed to a pretty robust security infrastructure and security staff, which includes a director of security, as well as 3 full-time security aides and 1 part-time security aide, all of whom are former law enforcement personnel. Our budget maintains that $500,000 commitment to our security infrastructure, and it also includes a couple of enhancements to our physical structure. We don't talk about those in a lot of detail publicly, but we do have a couple of things we're doing to the building for next year, and we also are replacing some of our cameras as well. We're able to fit into next year's budget replacement of our 1964 tennis courts. They are the original tennis courts that were there when the tennis courts were first put in, around when the building was built. They are in tremendous disrepair. They look more like a meadow sometimes than they do tennis courts because there is so much greenery growing up through the cracks. And we've been repairing them every year, but the problem is winter comes, they expand, the cracks reappear. So we are actually able to fit that into the budget. And the way that we're doing it, Tim, what's it called? The
Post-tension concrete.
It's a different type of system so that it allows for expansion and contraction, so we should have lower maintenance costs. And obviously our tennis teams use it, our physical education classes use it, and we do have community members that utilize them quite a bit. So we're happy that we're able to fit that project in there. And then we always just include a few student achievement highlights. There are, as hopefully as you read in the paper and you might see in the newsletter, our students excel in athletics, in co-curriculars, in academics. We actually were just recognized at the high school by the College Board for the first year that they are awarding the diversity in computer science for the number of female students we have enrolled in our computer science courses. Our number of students participating in advanced placement tests and their performance on the advanced placement tests continues to increase. I actually, for every year that I've been in the district, this is my 6th year, every year I'm actually able to say that we've done better than the prior year in terms of our SAT performance, our PSAT performance, our AP performance, and we have a number of different newer activities that our students are getting involved in, including a hackathon that our students put on. It's an all-day coding event, and they do invite the middle school students to it. This year will be our second hackathon. We just hosted our 3rd annual TEDx youth event, for those of you who are familiar with TED Talks. And we actually have a number of students participating in something called LaunchX, which is through a partnership with MIT, and it's an entrepreneurship program. So those are just some of the things our students are participating in and getting recognized in. We had conference, state, and sectional champs this year in boys and girls soccer, in wrestling, and in boys fencing, and we're in the midst of the spring season competing. So those are just a highlight of some of the items that the budget supports, and it's nice to see what the results are of the board's support and the community support of the budget at the school. And we truly appreciate serving our community. All 4 of our towns are so supportive of the high school. We have excellent relationships with the township committees, and I know that, we don't see you all that often, but you are in a professional manner, I should say, but I see many of you at school events, and I truly feel very lucky to work in such a supportive community because it makes our job all that much easier at the high school. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Stiles, where he will share some more of the financial details with you.
Thank you, Dr. Jewett. Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the Township Committee for having us. I too, I agree with Dr. Jewett. Coming before the town is always a good idea for the schools. Gives us an opportunity to talk. At least you get to know what's going on with our budget, which is a good thing. And certainly with the residents here, that's always good as well. So our budget this year is, the total budget's $46 million, excludes debt service, $46,817,000. On a spending basis, that's up 0.64%. So spending last year to this year, it's less than 1%. The tax levy increase is 1.77%. The mandate's 2%. We did get additional state aid, and the board felt strongly to send that back to taxpayers. So we sent half of the $140,000 extra aid that we got back to taxpayers in the form of tax relief. So that's why it's below 2%. Our categorical state aid, did go up for the second straight year, and that's based on the formula that the legislature is trying to fund. If we were to get all of the funding, according to the formula, we'd have $1 million more. But clearly, the state doesn't have the money to fund it all, so we get a percentage, a piece of that. And we've been shorted for years, just based on the way the formula has played out. And it's based on enrollment, and our enrollment had gone up for years, but we never got the aid. It was flat for so many years. So, not that I'm sorry to complain about the state. I was there today, so, so I have to complain. But our total state aid is $1,589,000. That's about where it was 10 years ago, just as a reference. We did get, and outside of that, we got $361,000 of debt service aid that's applied directly to the debt payment that we had for the 2013 bond, if you remember that. That's the thing we were talking about, getting the 40% aid. So the tax impact for the average home, average to average, is a decrease of $51. And per $100,000, that's about $1,371. The reason, and if you flip the page, I gave you a second page, the reason it's a decrease, and it's something that, it's an anomaly in a regional budget. Our tax levy is allocated differently every year based on 2 figures, really. It compares our regional enrollment versus the elementary enrollment and compares that to the other 2 towns. So in this particular year, your elementary enrollment went up in comparison to our regional enrollment. That's why you see that negative number. Watchung went the other way, so theirs went up. And then in terms of the equalized values, the highest there was Watchung. Theirs went up the highest, and yours is the 0.042. Went up, but just much smaller compared to the other 2. So you see the change in the rate. That's the percentage of your portion of our tax levy. Went down actually a point and a half, at 1.5%. So that's why
Why isn't Greenbrook on there?
Greenbrook pays tuition. They are send
okay.
receive.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So they're a source of revenue for us, really. And information, we have information on our budget, on our budget on our website. So you can look at our website. You have more detailed information, the line items and whatnot. One thing I'll just mention, one of the reasons we did have a better year, and it's what kind of drives a lot of these budgets, our health care. We moved to a school health insurance fund, a self-insured fund, and that has worked out very well for us for the past 2 years. So we had an increase of like 2% for health care, and that's pretty good. Thank you. If you guys have questions.
Any questions?
So on the change in regional enrollment versus elementary enrollment, so your numbers are still going down versus the elementary enrollments that are going up. Is that what you're saying?
Long Hill's elementary enrollment is going up. That's what I've seen. Our enrollment, we had it's like 4 years behind, right? So you guys had a little decrease. So now those students are working their way through our school.
Right,
So the elementary school is rising and we're actually dropping. And-
right.
But other towns have elementary enrollments that are dropping, like Warren was dropping. Now, I don't know where that's going to work out with the development, but we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, there's a lot of affordable housing on the horizon,
Correct.
so. And then when you talk about the change in equalized valuation, this is based on assessed value?
It's the county equalized values, not the township assessed values, the equalized values that the county posts.
Right,
So
okay.
yours didn't go up as high as those other two?
Right, so the equalized value is supposed to make everything 100% of market value, so to speak. So Warren and Watchung's value differential is larger, and ours is closer to market value because we assess every year, is basically what this is saying. Okay. All right. And I would commend you on a 0.64% increase in spending. That's, that's tremendous. I wish our local school could do that.
Our Board of Education is tough.
That is really tremendous.
So actually, a quick question about that, right? You've done a fantastic job of keeping the costs under control, but the tax levy is going up by 1.7.
But that's a blended number, right?
What?
No,
why
the
would-
tax levy is, that's the,
Overall,
Yes,
at
that's
the
correct.
budget, what did you lose in funding that prompted the tax source to come up?
let's see, what did we lose it for? No, we really didn't. I mean, we gained in state aid.
You're asking why our budget's only an increase of 0.64%, but the tax levy increase is
The
1.77.
taxes are taking a bird. Something had to disappear
Yeah.
off the revenue line.
Yeah, there's 1% missing.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that. It depends on, like, not a big reduction. A reduction that was significant in our budget this year is we had a larger capital budget last year, and it's a little short, it's smaller this year. Even though we're putting in the tennis court, last year, the year we're in right now, we're redoing 2 locker rooms and putting air conditioning over the gym in the middle of the school. So that was a significant project. So that's part of the reason. So, just some of the costs that went down, and like I said, the healthcare was a big issue. So it's just some of our costs. I know you're trying to think the revenue, what revenue dropped, but it really didn't.
It's really some of our reserves, I guess, are dropping.
Well, we didn't use as
Okay.
much of our own
Yep.
reserves as well.
Yep.
Good. Thank you.
We're familiar with that line.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, first off, thank you very much for coming. I look forward to this evening each year because we don't get to engage with each other that often, maybe individually, but not as a group. And school spending, of course, is a lion's share of property taxes, so I think
Okay.
public in this environment would be, it's great to hear from you directly in this meeting, not just at your own meetings. I do have one question, and I don't get as granular as Bruce and, say, Brendan, because they're familiar with school budgets more than I am. But the one cost that always jumps out in our budget, your budget, and the K-8 budget are healthcare costs, and you even referenced that. And during one of the meetings, maybe 6 months back, for the K-8, and then it was reported in the paper, the superintendent said that family health plans cost north of $40,000 per year. I've always questioned whether that was accurate, but he said it. And I don't expect you to know, but if you do you know what it costs for a family health plan
Under our plan.
under yours?
Yeah, ours is, I think it's about 33 or 4. It's not 40, but it's up there.
No, which I know it's a number that always jumps out, but even ours, I think, is
About 33,
about 33. It's similar to yours. And I know there's a bill working its way through Trenton which you're probably even more familiar with than I am, which would allow municipalities and school boards to use the same health plan and perhaps strengthen numbers. And it would be great if we all can lower it a little. Ours is similar to yours. I think the K-8's higher, but it would be great if we can all, migrate towards the lower number. But I'm pleased to hear that your numbers are basically the same as ours.
It drives the whole budget. It really does. It's the biggest.
Sadly, right? Even in private
because-
sector now, I mean, it's
How
such a-
how are you guys dealing with transportation costs? I know that's always been a struggle. Here at the K-8, it's always, an issue when you talk about special needs kids and the high cost per kid. But generally speaking, how are you guys dealing with the transportation costs up there?
What we try to do, we try to make our routes as efficient as possible, meaning we triple tier, pick up the high school kids, drop them off, elementary kids, middle school. So we work with the elementary schools. More Watchung and Long Hill, we're trying to work more with Warren. We bid it with them because we can get better numbers when we bid together. And we just try to triple tier wherever we can. It's a little easier in Long Hill to do that. It's not as hilly as Watchung is. Watchung's a little tough. But that's kind of the best we can do. I mean, it's challenging for us because we have to supply a bus seat for every
Have to
kid.
supply a what?
For a bus seat
A bus seat, right.
for every student,
Yeah.
even though we know
They're not on the bus.
a number of those kids aren't going to be on that bus because they're going to be driving. Mom and dad's going to drive them.
Right.
So we kind of oversubscribe. So we'll set up routes with 60 kids, knowing that 15 of them are going to be driving. So that's kind of what we do to combat that. But the best we can do is make them as efficient as possible. And if we don't feel the price is right and we know we can go out to bid, we'll just go back out to bid and see if we can get competitive prices.
Right.
It's challenging right now, particularly because there's a lot of legislation with bus drivers, and I understand it. I understand it's hard to argue against making the bus drivers safe, the whole thing. But there's a driver shortage, and the legislature is making it tougher for people wanting to drive a bus.
Not in Lakewood.
So that's probably the only place. But I mean, it's tough. That part it's not easy.
And how much of your budget would you attribute to labor costs?
Salaries, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Salaries and benefits?
the operating budget's probably it's 70-75%.
Yeah, at least three-quarters. Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's all labor.
Any other questions for the Watchung Hills reps? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Coming to the
See you.
board
Thanks
members.
for being
Appreciate
here.
it.
Thank you.
All right, moving along. Let's see, we have liaison.
Give me my name back.
Liaison.
Pick one. There's multiple up here.
All right, liaison reports. Let's see, I'll start with Brendan this time.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Anytime.
I'd like to give the police report. School activity year-to-date, 753 posts and checks. To date, 15 malefactors have been arrested. There have been 1,193 motor vehicle stops so far this year, and the self-initiated and calls for service to date. That's whenever an officer initiates a response or is called for a response, there have been 6,295 so far this year. Thankfully, major incidents since the last update have been there haven't been any. The mayor is going to talk about the details of the fishing derby on April 20th. But that's just to remember, just a reminder to everyone that that will be occurring. On another item under community policing is on Friday, June 7th. More than 3,000 officers will take to the streets of their towns and communities on one of 26 separate routes to help carry the flame of hope for the Special Olympics for the New Jersey Summer Games. Long Hill Township police officers will be running one of the routes from Valley Road to the Berkeley Heights border to we'll be running one of the routes from Valley Road through the Berkeley Heights border to Long Hill Road in Basking Ridge, with a special visit through Gillette School and Millington School. And I can say it's a great event. It's a great thing to see. I witnessed it, the officers running from the comfort of my car last year. Just one last thing on special requests. The Long Hill Township Police Department would like to alert residents to a one-ring phone scam where automated phone numbers intentionally ring once. They do it repeatedly and frequently over random intervals. The scam is basically they want to have the individual call the number back, in which time the caller will be routed through premium domestic and international numbers, resulting in hefty charges. And so we urge residents to refrain from answering unexpected calls from unknown international or unusual numbers, and returning any calls to unknown or suspicious numbers. So that's my report, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Guy, you got anything?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So very quickly, we've talked about this for several years. The whole issue with the emerald ash borer has damaged a lot of trees in the county, and I know we're going to talk about trying to coordinate it with the second part of this this comment. So OEM Director Shane Daly and I, along with Chief Gallo, and the forestry expert from JCP&L are going to do a tour of the town on April 17th. I may not make it, so if anybody else from the committee can make it, I have a dinner that night with the county. But in either case, the purpose of that tour is to look for trees. We talked about this after Sandy. We talked about it again after Riley and Quinn. Working with JCP&L, we're going to look for trees that may be potential problems in terms of falling or branches falling during a storm. They will recommend dying trees that they are willing to remove, both on private and public properties. And we're hoping to coordinate with the county in terms of the EAB problem that we have in town. For those who don't remember, during Riley and Quinn, 100% of the outages, 100% of the outages were caused by fallen trees or fallen branches, either from private property or from township-owned property. As I think many people certainly on this committee know, I'm a tree hugger. It breaks my heart to cut down any tree. But nobody wants to cut down a tree on a blue sky day. But trust me, and this committee knows it all too well, when power is out, tempers rise just a touch. So this is going to be an attempt to mitigate the outages if we can. If there's a tree that might fall and take out 3 people, that's not the ones that they are looking for. If a tree might fall and it would take out a couple 100 people, they may recommend that tree to be pruned or removed. And then if it's on private property, the township and JCP&L will approach the owner. If it's on public property, this committee will discuss it. And that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Bruce?
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Cornell?
Nothing either here, sir.
All right, I got 2 things. The DPW, it's now spring is sprung, so they can do a lot more outdoor activities. The street sweeping has started, which is good. They're also doing blacktop curbing. I saw them out there last week doing it. They're getting the lake ready for the opening on Memorial Day weekend. Mulch sales. So if people want mulch, they will deliver, a dump truck full? A dump truck full for $100. Just call down there, make an appointment, or you can go down anytime you want and pick it up for free as much as you want, correct?
Yes, not till the 26th.
Okay, after April 26th, you can go down there and take as much as you want for free. Please do, so we don't get stuck with it. And is the yard open on Saturday starting this week?
Started last week.
As of last week, the yard is open on Saturday morning, so if people want to come down and drop stuff off, please do. As for the fire departments, luckily, on Thursday, I was invited to a nice ceremony. Firefighter Wanamaker came up with the idea and invited everybody that was at the scene of the bus accident to honor the children that were there. So the people from Millington, Sterling, the police officers, everybody from, I can't say everybody, but people from the rescue squad were there, and all the kids were there, and they made these really nice certificates for the kids that had the patches or emblems for all 4 agencies, and he gave out a bravery pin. So I've never seen a bravery pin given out in this town, so the kids really got a big kick out of it. Their parents were there, and it was very well attended. So great job by everybody coming together to honor the kids, and believe me, if it wasn't for the kids keeping calm, that thing could have went sideways real quick, so great job. And then, does Millington have anything at the street fair this week?
Yeah,
What do you got? Oh, at the street fair?
Sterling.
We'll just,
No, at the Sterling Street Fair.
yeah, we'll just be present, selling T-shirts and things.
All right, so Millington Fire Department will be at the street fair, selling T-shirts. It's obviously a fundraiser, so please stop in and see them. And Sterling Fire Department, if you're hungry, they're going to have sausage and peppers for sale. And one thing those guys are good at, they can cook. So I've been to numerous events they've had, and every time the meal is excellent. So if you're going to eat, support one of our local organizations and eat with them. No more from me. Nancy, I turn it over to you.
Yep. Thank you. The RFB, request for bids for the sewer sale, was approved by the comptroller. We were notified the day before yesterday. It was much faster than we had anticipated. So the RFB will begin to be advertised on April 18th, when it will become available to the public, and then it will be advertised for 6 weeks, and then you go through the same process you went through 2 years ago. The ongoing Gillette train station light saga, I am still waiting for a quote on a timer. This committee asked me to look into the possibility of a timer. I have come up with some help from people, a combination of a photo cell with a timer. So what it would do is, let's say that you have the timer come on at 4 o'clock in the morning. When it starts, if the timer comes on at like 4 o'clock in the morning, obviously it's going to be dark out. The photo cell would tell the light to light up, and it would come on. When it turns light out, the photo cell will tell the light to turn off, and then the same thing would happen at night, opposite. When it would become dark, it would turn on. Then it would, let's say you turn the timer off at 12 o'clock, then the lights would go off. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, the photocell knows it's dark and wants to turn on, but it doesn't have power. So it's a combination of a photocell and a timer. I'm waiting for the quote from the electrician, but for the timer. But in addition, because the personnel at DPW and because personnel at JCP&L have changed since we last looked into this, the new representative at JCP&L is meeting Al and I out there next week, because he's kind of new to this game. And when I told him what our deal was with Rob Walton, he has to go out and look for himself to see how everything is going to connect, and just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So I anticipate by the next meeting, we will have a concrete answer on that. Bids were due today for the paving of Morristown Road for Phase 1 and Phase 2. 2 bids were received and are being reviewed, so an award will most likely be made by you on the April 24th meeting, with construction probably beginning sometime in May. The lowest bidder, good news, was under the grant amount that we received from DOT. So that was positive. Another positive, we received a grant from DOT in the amount of $225,000 for River Road that we applied for in October. The total for the project is about $255,000. That'll take place next year. And then on the negative, we received notification today that we did not get the grant for the bike path for Dogwood.
Thank you.
That's all
Anything
I
else?
have. Nope.
All right. We have discussion items next.
Yes.
Moving along, discussion items. I believe Mr. Carruthers is here from the Environmental Commission. Floor is yours, sir.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We have an opportunity at the Environmental Commission to apply for a grant of $1,500 from the New Jersey Association of Environmental Commission, ANJEC, and putting forward a proposal to prepare a pollinator garden for the monarch butterflies that pass through here in spring. So as part of the grant application, which is due by next Monday, they need a letter of support from the town saying that if I run over budget, that the town will pick it up. I do not intend to run anywhere near that if we win it, but I still need this letter from the town. My idea for the particular site is a patch about 160 square feet at the rear of the library. I'm totally turned around here now, so at the rear car park, there's a space of ground between there and the edges of the reed beds and the woods behind. It's about 20 yards wide by about 60, 75 yards long. That would be a pretty good starting point. There is already a trail there down to the woods. There is already a sign there, although I have put in as part of the actual budget costings an approximate price for a display. But if we could use the sign that's down there, then we can use the funding for something else, such as preparing special kits for school kids to raise the larvae into adult butterflies. And I see this as being a part of a longer term project. That's about it in brief. I don't want to be taking up too much of your time.
So do we need to,
No,
Well,
money. No money.
hold on, This is the area behind the parking lot behind Town Hall? Behind the library?
Behind the library
The
itself.
same place that we're talking a little bit about a dog park?
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Do we need to
So-
talk about this? Because
Yeah.
it's,
No, isn't it by the trail? Didn't you say it was by the beginning of the trail?
By the,
Which
by
is
the
not the
beginning of the
same.
trail.
Is it?
Not, it is exactly the same?
Wait, Lisa, can you come up, please, so we can get you on the microphone? And our rec director's gonna come up and clarify something.
and I'm sorry, before we give it to Lisa, how big a space are we talking about?
Approximately 160 square feet, about 8 feet by 20 feet.
8 by 20?
Oh. Well, Lisa, I have a question, Mr. Crows, when you're done.
Lisa Scanlon, Rec Director. The dog park that you were considering, you had 2 different sites in front of you, is in that footprint. But what Terry's talking about is relatively small. Perhaps the 2 could coexist. I don't know if the butterflies will come if dogs are running next to it, but
Terry, that dog park issue aside, does it have to be there? Could you put it on the side over there, on this side of Town Hall, like facing the fields?
Yes, it just needs to be somewhere that receives over 6 to 8 hours of sun every day.
Oh,
At
okay.
least during the breeding,
So-
during the growing season. That's the primary point.
So basically, it'd be on this property pretty much anywhere?
Yeah.
Okay, and that won't affect what you guys need, the location on this property doesn't affect
No,
what the grant is or anything else?
no,
Okay, thank you.
no.
And,
Theoretically, you could take 3 parking spots.
and the maximum exposure to the township if you got nothing for the grant?
I wouldn't be pursuing it any further. If I didn't receive the grant or if we didn't win the grant, then I'd stop it there. I would be looking at grant opportunities elsewhere.
And just so you know, obviously, does anybody have a problem not supporting this? No, okay, so clearly we're all in agreement to support your application. And just contact the administrator about other locations, just in case something else happens.
Will do.
But at least we can get this letter going so you can turn it in by Monday.
Great. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir. Good
Thank
job. All right, now, leading into the next discussion, I don't know the answer to this question. I believe Madam Clerk will have the answer. The survey for the dog park results. Survey says.
We need a
And what was
drum
the
roll.
actual question? So tell us the question and tell us the results.
The question was, if Long Hill had a dog park, would you use it?
All right, and the people that were surveyed were the people that own a dog, that actually
That
paid for a
license
dog
their
license.
dogs.
Got
So
it.
we have 807 licensed dogs, so that's, and of that, the response we got was 332 yeses and 242 noes.
How many no's?
242. So it's about, a third more.
I'll tell you what, that's an impressive response, regardless of the breakdown. 75% of the dog license owners.
But what happened to the other
And it's
300?
actually more than that because there's multiple, a lot of number of people have multiple dogs, so people licensing dogs are probably maybe 700, so it's a very,
That's
you know,
impressive.
So some didn't answer at all?
some didn't answer, but everybody, most people answered. I don't know exactly how many people, because I don't know the dog multiples, but there's a fair amount of multiples, so I would
Yes, almost
guess
like
that it's
600 out
yeah,
of 700.
Out of 7 or 750, yeah.
But you
That's
should,
impressive.
you should probably count the no answers as no's.
So then I guess what we'll do is we'll just discuss this at the next meeting. I believe, Ms. Scanlon, you'll come up with, at least give us something. I remember you did a presentation with the pros and cons and approximate costs. So I don't know if you have to be, maybe you do want to be here next meeting, but at least we'll put it on and we'll bring it to a vote at that point. Enough's enough. All right. Next agenda item, HPAC requests. Who's that?
That's me.
That's Nancy. Go ahead.
The Historic Preservation Committee is an advisory committee, and so when they want to spend money, I bring it to you, and you can consider it. One of the things they want to consider is they purchased some time ago a display system for photographs and other exhibits that can hang around. They would like to hang around the old schoolhouse. So what this is a guide wire. Basically, they call it a hanging system, but that didn't really sound nice to me. So it is a guide wire system that goes around the ceiling just below the molding, and they only want to do it on the historic side of the building. It allows to hang photos without having to put holes in the walls. The installation, I don't believe that the DPW is comfortable in doing the installation because it has to be pretty precise. And so we've estimated that it would probably cost around $2,000, but we don't have quotes yet. So I couldn't guarantee the amount, so I don't know if you want to, if you're interested in it, in allowing them to hang it, if you want to put a cap on, or you want to wait until we get the quotes, or just give me a go-ahead.
But Nancy, we actually have purchased the system. Is
Right,
that-
no,
that- yeah. So that's,
they purchased a system like years ago,
yeah,
apparently.
yeah. So now it's the hanging.
The hanging, right.
part of it. Yeah. So
I mean, it could be less, you know.
yeah.
Can we get a quote?
Yeah,
I
we
would
should.
get at least 2 or 3 quotes before we do anything.
Yeah.
Oh, right, so do you want
This-
to give me a max, or do you want to just wait until I get the...
We already have the system. We're talking about the installation.
Yeah, it's
that's it.
installation. That's all. Yeah.
And then they can obviously hang the paintings up or pictures up themselves, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I mean, I've heard actually that there's somebody who is related to somebody who is John F. Kennedy's photographer, and they have photos that they want to put up, which sounds pretty cool to me. But I don't know if you want to give me the go-ahead so that they can move it along with a cap?
Yeah, put a cap. My own opinion is put a cap on it, not to say that they can't go over it, but, I mean, look, the system's there already. I don't see any.
Yeah. I mean, we have to hang it, right? I mean,
Right.
but it's just. I mean, I get quotes.
No, of
Right.
course, we'll get quotes, but do you want to say, okay, you can go ahead with it as long as it's not over X amount?
No, we should. I mean, I think we should get
Just
quotes.
get some
and,
quotes, and then we'll discuss them once you get some
Okay.
quotes.
I mean, but I would say that the lowest quote is what we go with.
Yeah,
Right.
is that all right
I mean,
with
we're
you guys?
definitely going to hang it.
Can't fool Brendan, I'll tell you.
Okay, so
Thanks.
we'll get the quotes for that.
I would prefer quotes first
Yeah.
before we approve.
Exactly. All right, yes, Ms. Praza, you can come up. Ms. Praza's coming up to the mic from the HPAC.
Just an explanation a little bit. These systems allow for the most versatility of hanging things without constantly putting things in the wall. It's a simple metal track that fits very near the ceiling. There's a variety of hardware. We've bought a very skeleton selection because we're not real sure now. But it allows different folks who are using the room to display things without damaging the wall or wanting to put stickers on the wall, and all the different ways groups would use it. You probably, every one of you have seen similar systems in museums, obviously, galleries, even as simple as walking down the corridor in Morristown Hospital, where they display local artists' paintings that are partially for sale for the artist and partially for the system. Rather than constantly changing anything, you just simply change these guide wires, and they are very versatile. You can put anything from a full-size quilt, massive painting, to simply, if the scouts, for instance, wanted to use it, mounting photos of their camping trips on cardboard, which would hang on clips on this sort of thing. So they really are worthwhile preserving the building, I can't imagine it would cost $2,000, because all it really is tacking this thing up across the ceiling. But it is really worthwhile for the use of the building, and I'm just hoping you'll consider it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peraza. All right, moving along.
Okay,
Open
so-
Space Trust
Wait,
Fund.
wait, I'm not done.
Okay.
I had one other, they have requested a defibrillator for the building. That's about $1,000.
And that what comes out with historic preservation?
Yes.
That's obvious.
Do you have anybody in the building?
Well, there are classes in the building, so there's yoga classes and rec classes, and various groups meet in the building. I think Boy Scouts meet in the building.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's fine.
I mean-
Well, I think that's, Lisa, you might know the answer. How long do those defibrillators last? Like, what's the shelf life of one of those?
So the shelf life of a defibrillator is a factor of how often it's used and where it's stored and how it's kept. Generally speaking, once you make the initial purchase, the pads that you have to put in them, they expire about every 2 years. There's maybe, $175 every 2 years to replace the pads. And then the batteries. So it's really important, kind of like when you're purchasing a printer, and the initial cost isn't always in the printer, it's in the ink. So you have to make that consideration when you're purchasing it. Also, when you're purchasing a defibrillator, same kind of rationale goes into it. The batteries are big lithium batteries that go in it, so you have to research and figure out which ones work well the best with the batteries.
Is this hardwired in? Like,
No, it's
hanging
not.
on the wall, so there's no like charging station that it's in?
Right.
Okay.
So, and once you put them up, you do have a responsibility to check them every month, and make sure that they're served, going to work when you need them. And you also have a responsibility to keep them accessible and open. Like you'll notice when you go in the park, ours are not in locked cabinets. Now, I'm not foolish, I have a camera on them, but they have to be accessible when somebody needs it.
So how many of these things do we have around town?
So as part of the rec department, we have 3. We have 2 in this building. The Baseball Softball Association has one at their facility. They are in all the schools. Each police car carries one with them. The rescue squad has them. I happen to have one in the back of my car. They're
So is there somebody who's responsible for checking these things?
absolutely every one of them.
Is that you?
I do check mine. I check mine. I check the rescue squads whenever I'm in the ambulance.
So if we add this one, you'll be checking this one as well?
I would.
Okay.
I would. Absolutely. It's not hard to check.
No. I'm just, it certainly seems like something that needs to be done regularly, so
It is. You just
somebody
put it on
who's
a schedule.
responsible for them
Right.
needs to be
You do have
identified.
to. Our safety officer, as part of their rounds here in the building, checks all these. Also checks the ones in my rec locations too, and we double up on that. So the thing is, when you need one, you need one.
Well, that's kind of what I'm leading to.
minute,
I'd hate to
for
have them out there, and then when it's needed, it's not serviced properly,
Right.
right? So I
But
want to
for
make
every
sure that
minute
it's
you
serviced
delay it,
properly.
your chances of survival are reduced by 10%. So after 10 minutes, you get 0.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Any more questions for Lisa while we have her up there? Thank you, Lisa. All right, so it's $1,000 for the defibrillator?
Yep.
I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
Nope, looks like that's a go.
Okay,
Is that all you have? What do you have next?
that's all I have for that.
All right.
So, Open Space Trust Fund?
Open Space Trust Fund request, I'll let Nancy deal with that, and Lisa's here too if you have any questions.
Yep. So we have 2 requests that have not been funded in this year's operating or capital budgets. And the CFO and I, as well as I believe the Finance Committee, felt it was more appropriate to fund them out of the trust if you choose to fund them at all. There's currently $160,000 in the open.
Sorry, not to interrupt, but aren't we meeting on Saturday to discuss?
Oh, no, they canceled that. You missed
Oh,
that
we
meeting.
can't, did I miss that? We
Yeah.
canceled that, really? Sorry,
Yeah.
okay.
There you go.
thanks.
So so if you choose to fund them, there's $160,000 in the trust fund. So the first is a playground at Sterling Lake Park. This is the most used playground in town. And just to clarify, I mean, you probably know, but it's open to everyone, not just people that have badges to the lake. It is 25 years old, and the average lifespan for a playground is 15 to 20 years. It needs major repairs. We had an inspection the other day, a courtesy inspection from the JIF. It needs more than $10,000 in repairs. So the rec director has requested a new playground. The playground that she proposed would have separate areas for kids ages 2 to 5 and kids ages 5 to 12. They're in the proposal. There's a swing set and a sea serpent and a frog. It's got a theme. There are pictures here if you want to pass them around. The cost is $95,000, which sounds like a lot, but when you think about how much we have to put in repairs and it's well exceeded its lifespan. I would open it up to questions for Lisa if you have any.
Does that include installation?
Yes.
Okay, that's with installation. And
Yes.
the other question is when, let's say, for example, we approve it, what's the timeline for getting this installed?
Well, let me answer the beginning of
Oh.
that. We'd have to do a capital ordinance. So we'd introduce an ordinance at the next meeting, and then it takes, if we did special advertising, it would only take 2 more weeks. We could have the funding in place by the second week in May, I think is what we said.
So if you ordered it, say, early May, realistically speaking, when do we expect to see it up there?
I'd have to get into a schedule. Obviously, the summertime is the most busiest time of the year, but I would, if it was available second week in May, I would call my rep that day and get it ordered.
Oh, okay, good.
So if, presumably, we would need to take the current playground, we'd have to remove it, is that
Yes.
right?
That's part of the installation, also includes removal of the old.
But if we didn't vote on this, if we said no to this, we would have to remove that playground anyway, right?
No, you'd have to repair it.
Oh, okay.
You have to
And
repair
that's,
it. It's
said-
quite a bit. I had a playground inspector come out in December, and he gave me a list of about $8,000 to $9,000 worth of repairs that were needed. And then I went back out with a representative from the JIF, who also happened to have another hat on as a playground inspector, and he said, oh no, it's much more than that. You have weak platforms and things that all have to be replaced, and each one of the platforms was over $1,000.
This is through the state contract, Lisa?
Yeah, the
Okay,
one that
thank
you
you.
have in front of you, yes.
And for those of you keeping score at home, that means we don't have to send it out to bid because it's already been pre-approved through the state.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, as you well know, and Lisa, you know as well, we had a very positive experience with the playground that was installed at the Little League field.
Yep.
And the playground at the lake gets a lot of use.
It does.
So I think it's a great idea. It's 10 years past its life expectancy. And, you know, if the JIF guy's saying there's a problem there, now I am concerned about what's there. Whether we put in a new one or not, the one that's there has to have,
Some
what sounds to
substantial
me
repairs.
somewhere up north of $20,000 worth of repairs. So, I mean, I like the idea.
and Lisa, is this I mean, we've seen the photographs, this is a kind of new and improved, it's a better playground?
It's a different manufacturer than the one that's there. Not that the one that's there was a bad playground, it was a great playground.
No.
It's just that we sat looking at through catalogs. I mean, Cornell, you remember, we sat there in September going round table and trying to figure it out with the rec committee and looking at different types of playgrounds we could go with. I solicited several different manufacturers' quotes for a playground for that space. And then we voted on the playground that we liked the best out of there, and that's this one. And we thought the theme kind of went with the lake and
Yep.
everything.
But it has features that are different from what we have right there?
I mean, from the extent that you still have a swing set, and you have climbing structures, and structures that elicit play, you know.
Okay.
Does the current one have age specific separated?
It does.
The current one does,
It's
okay.
very similar in that what we're targeting for ages.
Brendan likes the frog, I think.
Yeah.
I do too.
Sea serpent.
I like the serpent too.
So this actually brings up an interesting discussion that we had at the Finance Committee. Nancy pointed out that one of the things that the Finance Committee recommended was that the Open Space Trust, the Open Space Rec Trust pay for this, right? That's what we're collecting tax dollars for. And quite frankly, I don't think there's a whole lot of properties on the horizon that we're looking at acquiring. But we do have the context of, you know, we now have a turf field that we need to be prepared to maintain and redo every 15
12
years, 12 years, whatever, you know, whatever time frame we can procrastinate it out to. And there are some additional expenses that we look to push off to the side, to the Open Space Trust as well. And additionally, a couple of years ago, if you recall, we pushed much of the rec department's, I'll call it micro detail, for lack of a better term, onto a separate set of books, right? So we don't see things like, you know, the little things that you do day in and day out. We don't see that in the municipal budget. That's kept on another set of books, along with the revenues from fees and you know, and any expenses and stuff like that. And one of the things that came out in this year's budget cycle was that the rest of the Township Committee doesn't really have a whole lot of visibility into those transactions or the prioritization of those transactions. So we just wanted to bring to the committee's attention, one, that there's this set of books that we should look at, and maybe, I don't think we have a formal threshold policy when somebody has to ask.
We do.
What,
We do.
okay. I don't know what it is. I'm glad you do. Right before some type of expense has to come to the Township Committee prior to approval. And also, you know, the playground sounds great, but you need to take it in the context of that there's a whole bunch of other stuff that needs to poke away at that money. And
Do you have an estimate of how much that other
so
stuff is?
we do, we as in Bruce and I don't believe the rest of the committee has been given the
What?
Open Space Trust detail and
Was-
the Rec Trust detail. Which is why I
Right.
bring this up. So you're kind of making this decision in a vacuum.
Well-
Right, and the other thing to understand is that because it's not part of the operating budget, it wasn't necessary to do it right now.
Right.
That's why it didn't, you know, we just said, okay, let's put it to the side for now. Let's focus on the budget, the operating budget, get through that process,
Yeah.
and then we can bring up the rec trust and talk about some of the items that are on this list, right, in the context of that in and of itself.
So if I can just add something to this. So the rec trust is pretty standard in almost every town. What it is it's a revolving trust. So fees come in for the programs that rec runs, and those fees go out to pay for the programs. In the trust as it stands right now, there is I don't really want to call it a surplus, but there's a balance of about, what did we say, $120,000, I believe. Just in my opinion, I believe that the Open Space Trust Fund is a more appropriate place to fund something like this, because the revolving trust is really something that just is money comes in, money goes out. The money that's there right now, we do have some planned uses for. And as far as the future uses for the Open Space Trust Fund, I mean, we did pay a big portion of the debt down this year. And, you know, it's a policy decision for all of you. I mean, I'm not gonna say that, you know, you have all the, you should make a decision without having all the information, but you generally have the gist of it. I mean, I believe that the rec department is in good condition financially. So it's really a policy decision of, you know, whether or not you want to invest this money, and then there's a second request as well. So I'm not as conservative as Cornell.
I'm not suggesting it's in bad condition, but I think the committee needs to understand the monies that go in and go out on that,
Procedural question.
right? And make a decision in the context of all the other things that we need to do. And it's complicated because, right, we get turf field revenue, right, for rentals, which we said a long time ago, some of that is supposed to be channeling back into open space. So, you know, how much of that has been channeling back? I'm on the finance committee, I can't tell you offhand, right? I don't know how much money has moved from, I know the oratory fee goes straight into open space because that was by ordinance, right? I don't know where, if we get some rental fees, there's some operational costs, like, you know, sweeping the snow off in the wintertime, retufting the turf in, you know, 3 or 4 times a year, right? That all has to come off. I don't know how much we're putting, is the rest moving into the trust? I don't know. Do we want it to? Do we not want it to? Do we have other expenses earmarked for those items? I don't know.
So when you say that, I'm not sure what you want to know, what goes in the trust and what does not, but we did give you that breakdown
Yes,
of the, right.
Bruce and I received
Right.
that information, but the rest of the committee is not, and they're making a decision completely in the dark about the finances on the back end. So my suggestion is that we just get copies of all those budget items to the rest of the committee so that they can review.
I thought that this,
Hey, she emailed us that.
Did it go to everybody? I thought.
Yeah, pretty sure it did.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I did because
You asked for it.
you asked for it, right, you asked that
Yes.
the whole committee see the rec.
Okay,
the-
I had only seen our names, but
Well,
it's
you
possible
get it
that the rest.
separately, and then I followed up with the whole committee. So I believe that they've seen everything that
Yep.
you've seen.
Ms. Q, answer some of those, where's the
Well, I
rental,
don't-
obviously, the money from oratory goes to pay off the turf, correct?
Well, it goes right directly and it gets earmarked.
Yes.
And then, as far as I'm concerned, I track every single rental separately. So I know what's going on turf, what's going on the grass, who's paying for lights. All of that is tracked separately. It doesn't go into separate accounts here, but it's earmarked separately.
Well, but the open space trust fund account is distinctly separate.
That is.
Yes.
Yes, it is. It's separate from the
Right, so
recreation trust.
the
yes.
movement of any money from turf field rental
Mm-hmm.
that goes to open space actually has to move as a transaction.
Right. And that's
Right.
not my.
Well, we do keep
area.
that separately. Well, Randy keeps it, at least for the last, 2 years, Randy's kept it separately.
So I honestly, I did not review it because, again, we took the viewpoint that this doesn't need to happen this second because it's not subject to the municipal budgeting deadline.
Well, no, but I mean, when I ask for requests, I ask for them as a whole because you need to look at whether you're going to fund something out of capital or whether you're going to fund it out of the trust fund, which again is separate from the budget, but you need to look at everything together. It was, I thought, agreed that we would look at these things when we had that budget meeting, but now the budget meeting's been canceled, so I was asked to present them at this meeting. As far as from a time perspective, I guess this one is, well, they're both actually time sensitive in the respect that if they want to be in use this year, the sooner the better from a decision-making standpoint. I mean, I don't know what information that you want that you don't currently have. So if you could tell me exactly what that is, then.
I just need to see and understand the numbers before I make a financial decision. That's just me.
The reason I came out tonight is this is something I feel very strongly in,
No,
because I know the
yep.
condition of it, and I know we started talking about this in the fall because we knew what was coming up with this playground. So it had been on my operating capital. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to sit with you guys individually to go over my operating capital, but I know that this piece was cut from that. And that's why we were pursuing this avenue. That's why this timing exists. It's something that I had always hoped to be ordering this spring and installing this summer into fall. And if I had to try and fund it out of a rec trust, I just do not have the monies there to fund it out of that, because those monies are already earmarked for different things. Not 100%, but I could not fund it out of there. And that's why we wanted to talk to you about funding it out of the Open Space Rec Trust Fund.
So Lisa, basically tonight we have to make a decision. Do we do the repairs or do we do the?
You don't have to make it tonight, but
no, I mean
but soon.
Yeah, I mean for the beginning of the season, right? It's going to impact the. If we delay the decision, then it's going to impact.
Well, the more we delay it,
The more time
the
we
more
lose.
the installation gets delayed, and we run up against a time where we've identified these issues with the playground. We only have so long to react to that.
Right.
So Nancy, just a quick question. We had discussed in the finance meeting that there was a $600 and something thousand open space rec trust balance, but we also had a $610,000 or $620,000 ban that we said we were going to pay down.
Not
in
trust.
full. No,
Not the revolving trust, the
no,
trust
the
fund.
open space
Trust
and
fund.
rec.
Trust
It is the open space and recreation trust
Okay.
fund.
Yes, so we used about 500,000 of that to
But
pay
we agreed
off
to
debt,
pay off completely the rec.
which I
fund.
believe that it is. I believe that it's paid off
Okay,
completely
I
now.
thought that number was like 620,000. So the question, my immediate question was, by my math, that really only leaves about 50,000 in the open space trust.
Well, I met with Randy today. He told me there was 160,000 available left in the trust, and 600 something thousand that we paid off debt with.
That's a different set of numbers than
I mean, at some point, I don't want to micromanage Lisa's department.
$95,000 is not a micromanage.
No, I understand that.
Neither
That-
is,
no,
neither
we're
is
talking about-
$45,000 of revenue
That's not
on
what
the
you were
turf field.
saying, Cornell. I get that part, but as far as what's coming in and out for certain programs, I mean, if you want Lisa to send us that report on a monthly basis, fine.
Yeah, we-
I-
we-
But
we
let's-
actually-
that was
stick
something-
to
We
the
actually,
conversation.
we actually discussed quarterly report to have, and you're right, I don't want a micromanagement, and that's why Bruce and I recommended 5 years ago to push those transactions off the municipal budget sheet. Right, specifically because
Good
I don't
recommendation, so let's
I don't
stick
need
to
to
that
worry
recommendation.
about a $200 line item in the budget, that if somebody charges this and has to pay that,
Exactly.
right? So we did that, but there are some thresholds that trigger, that requires a policy decision,
That's fair.
right? That's all I'm suggesting.
But what I'm saying is, we're talking about philosophically, at least, and then in real terms, is this something we would support? And frankly, I support it.
I agree with you, I just don't know. I say that in the context of not knowing the other things that I might want to spend money on, that I only have one bucket.
But is there something
Yeah, well, so there's a second item, right?
Well, yeah, but it still would be covered
Right.
by the amount.
What is the second item?
Well, we'll do the first one, for some second one, I gotta recuse myself.
Yeah, but I need to know the overall.
Well, I mean, you don't have to make, like, you can hear the second one
They're
before you
completely
make a
unrelated.
decision, but they're not
They're
related.
coming out of the
and
same
they're-
bucket.
Yes,
Yes.
So they're, okay.
one's the Baseball and Softball Association.
At least
That's the
here-
16,000?
No,
No.
I'm staying out of that. I know what the request, I guess,
I mean,
downstairs.
I see what you're saying.
So, well, first, before I have to recuse myself, what's the census here going down to support the $95,000 for the playground?
I support it.
All right?
I support it.
I would like to wait a meeting to understand the numbers because
By the way, I don't mind waiting a meeting.
I haven't, honestly, I did not review any of the rec spreadsheets or open space spreadsheet information because, like I said, the push to the side was to say there is no budget deadline. We can address that after the municipal budget is done.
Right.
So I'm not prepared in any way, shape, or form to take a decision. I would love to do the, don't get me wrong, in spirit, we see that every year when we're making hot dogs at Memorial Day. That playground needs to be replaced.
Bruce?
Okay, full stop.
Bruce, your position?
So I concur with Cornell. I absolutely agree that it needs to be replaced. I just don't feel that I'm ready to make a decision on spending money for this tonight.
Obviously, I vote to spend the money,
Okay.
but
So-
procedurally speaking,
No, well, procedurally speaking, I mean, we'd have to introduce an ordinance at the next meeting anyway. So anything that you need to know, you can find it between now and then you.
What,
we're
you two readings?
planning-
You've got three. To
Yeah,
be
so-
clear, I've given up.
I know, but I mean, you're not
We're not losing time.
making any real decisions except whether you want to proceed with introducing the ordinance and then,
Okay. So for Lisa, right, we're not losing time by
well,
delaying.
no, because she can't order it until we have the funding in
Yes.
place anyway. So it would be capital ordinance introduction at the next
well,
meeting.
the other thing is we could introduce the ordinance tonight, too, and then vote on it. When would it be relisted then?
No.
Why do we have to do?
No, and I'll defer my vote. I defer to the Finance Committee's recommendation. I don't see the problem with next meeting, and we can introduce it at the next meeting. I think that's fair.
That
Okay,
gives
so-
us time to
perfect.
review.
All right, so we'll put it on the agenda for the 24th.
24th, and
Got
we'll
it.
quick do it and turn it around in 2 weeks.
Right, in the one day,
Yes.
right, in the daily paper.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I got a procedural
No, there's
question.
no.
No
not
procedural
time
question
for
on this?
No. You
Why
can-
is that?
next-
Attorney Pigeon? Procedural question on what we just decided.
We didn't
No,
decide
I
anything.
We didn't decide anything.
There'll be public comment on it when it comes up on the agenda.
Yeah, no action was taken.
What does the Open Space Advisory Committee have to say?
Next item. I have to, the next
Wait,
item
yeah, you're-
is a request from the Baseball and Softball Association. I have to recuse myself because my wife's on the board, so I will leave, and don't let the meeting go crazy again, please, guys.
This is the thing.
Yeah.
This is the tax rebuild. Is that what this is?
So the Long Hill Baseball and Softball Association has requested funding for rebuilding and expansion of the deck at the Snack Shack, which is at the baseball field on Poplar. Is it Poplar? Right. Yeah, Poplar Drive. They only gave me one proposal. I asked them for two, but just for purposes of discussion tonight, we have the one proposal, which gave two options. The contractor, his name is Mike McCann, he looked at the existing deck and said that there are two options. One is to use the existing framing, and one is to replace the framing. He said that in his opinion, the framing's in really good shape. The difference between the two proposals is $3,000. So the lower option, which is to use the framing that's there now, is $26,000. Plus, he notes in there that there's a tree that would have to come down in order to put the new ADA ramp, which I imagine costs a couple $1,000s usually to take down a tree. So that'd be about $28,000. The other one with the new framing is $29,000 plus a couple thousand to take down the tree. It should be noted that the Baseball Association had requested that the deck be made out of a composite like Trex. The contractor notes that he doesn't recommend it for a variety of reasons, which are way over my head and have to do with joists and things on center and whatever, but he doesn't recommend it. But if you decided to fund it and you wanted to give them the money, and you decided to go with Trex or a similar composite, it would double the price. So the lowest option that you'd be looking at right now is about $28,000 if you choose to fund that.
Do we have a size of the deck?
The deck would be 20 by 40. There's something in your packet, a diagram. It's 20 by 40 with a double staircase and a ADA ramp.
Right, I was going to ask, it has to be ADA compliant. I don't know if the current one is.
It has a ramp now.
It does have a ramp, okay.
Yeah.
That's right, of course
Sorry,
it does. Yes, it
and
does.
how much was this?
Well, the lowest price that he gave is
$35 a square foot.
26,000, and then
That's what you're looking for?
we'd have to have tree taken down.
$35 a square foot.
It's not cheap.
Also, it should be noted in this proposal that he didn't include the cost of stainless steel ramp, stairway handrail, or labor, because the labor and materials would be donated by himself and one of the other, a dad from Little League.
So,
So essentially, we're talking about replacing the deck to make it ADA compliant. That's what we're talking about.
I think to make it bigger, I think it is, I don't think that it's not ADA compliant, I think that it is now, but I think it's to make it bigger, make the deck bigger and just, newer, better shape.
I was going to ask Lisa, so thank you.
Sorry, I don't mean to speak for them, but my understanding in the conversations that I've had with them is that just that it's the actual decking that's in need of repair. It's worn out, it's splintering. They've, painted it, sealed it over the years, and they just feel that it's time to replace it.
But they're making it bigger at the same time.
yeah.
Well, because of how the new ramp would be designed, that's a difference.
Yeah, I think the current ramp was kind of jerry-rigged after
It
the
kind of goes
fact.
all the way,
Right.
the whole length of it versus having it on the north side of the current
so
decking
the-
and just be a standalone ramp there. Because right now, when you walk up to the Stack Shack, you're actually walking all the way across it because they've just gotten.
You may remember,
ramp going up.
I would imagine that ramp was an add-on, not an original, because why would you ever design it the way it is?
Right, it could be. I'm not 100% sure. But I do know the reason that they want to change it out is just because the decking slats are wearing out.
And they also allow for double staircase for high-volume traffic.
So Nancy,
There's usually a big rush after baseball games for ice cream cones.
so Nancy, you're asking for us tonight.
I'm not asking, they're asking if
Yeah, are we
you
willing
want
to
to fund
support
that.
it?
If you wanted to fund it.
And this
Then
would
we
come
need
out of the
to-
same fund as
it
the
would-
95,000.
So we would need to see the figures, right?
Well,
I mean, I can send you, like I said, I'd asked them for 2 quotes, I only got 1.
Right.
so here's my my moral dilemma with this. The Snack Shack is the Little League's funding source. So we're, in essence, using taxpayer funds to help an organization fundraise.
Wait a minute,
They're using it to fundraise. They're not playing on it. They're raising money. I mean, I'm just as in tune with the next guy to do stuff for recreation. I've done a lot of stuff for recreation over the years. We redid the baseball fields, we put a playground in for the kids. This is different. They're raising money.
Jack, let me ask you a question. The township owns that property.
Yes,
They own the shack.
yes.
If someone gets hurt on that property, who's liable?
Well, under the lease, we require them to have insurance, but
Insurance.
the Jeff would certainly be involved. We'd certainly be named.
We also.
I don't know the right answer, but I'm conflicted seeing.
I'm
my
not
way
sure who
through
bought that snack shack.
Chuck, please.
I
let
know,
us
but yeah, I'm
discuss it.
giving you input. I'm not sure the town bought that snack shack.
But we'd own it because it's a fixture.
And
It's attached to the land, so it's, at the end of the lease, it's going to be township property. I think it's illegal because it's part of the operations of the Little League, which is a quasi-public
so you think
organization.
it's
I think it's legal.
Legal,
I'm not saying you should do it or not do
Yeah,
it, but I think
but
it would be a
legality.
legal use of the money, in my opinion.
So the moral dilemma, certainly from
It's
the
a moral
legal
dilemma.
perspective.
That I
is-
can't answer.
it's- Yeah, but the thing is that it's used by, it's
by the Little
it's used
League.
by every, but it's used by guests of the Little League, the players.
But it's all the Little League. There are no other activities that I'm aware of that take place down there that the Little League is not involved in.
Yep.
Certainly not the use of the snack shack.
But that's true of
Right.
the fields. We've put
But-
backstops and things in there.
Right, but, I mean, but the thing is that it's for the enjoyment of everyone who's down there
But
because.
it's for the fundraising of, I
The
agree
way I
with
look
you.
at
If
it-
it wasn't a fundraising exercise, I wouldn't have the dilemma that I have.
I don't know that I share your dilemma, to tell you the truth.
That's fair.
So I think this is part of the overall discussion of how to spend
Yeah.
money in that budget. So at this point, we're not going to do that.
That's right. In light of the previous conversation, let's think about what Cornell just talked about. I lean toward what Brendan's saying. This is for the enjoyment of township residents.
Well, if they can't raise money, they're going to look to the township for additional funds.
And just to be on the record, I suggested that they get a club license and sell beer out of that on the deck. They'll raise the money like that.
Better get a bigger deck.
Just don't let him build it at the same
And
time.
in the interim, we could probably see if the Little League can come up with a second bid.
But a second quote's not going to include volunteer labor.
Yeah, they're getting a quote from volunteers,
Right, it's
basically.
likely to be higher
Right.
because they are volunteering
Yeah.
some of the labor and materials, so it's
Right.
likely to be higher.
Right.
I mean, this gives you probably the lowest.
That's an expensive deck. It's not a cheap deck.
It's not a small deck either.
Well, I think at this point, we're going to consider it.
Consider it,
And we're going
yeah.
to see the bigger
Yeah,
picture
I-
before we
I'm
make a
fine with that.
decision. So let's move on.
Yeah, without
Yep.
getting into the
I'll
details.
get
Yeah.
But if you don't mind, make sure it's on the agenda for, well, I won't be here. So it'll be, if I'm gonna be here.
Hey, Guy. Guy. I don't, whenever we're all here, I don't, no rush.
All right, we're back. I didn't hear any yelling, so good job. That's an improvement from last week. All right, so sewer plant operator RFP is the last discussion item. Jack, that's your business.
Yes, this is Plan B. The Township Committee has decided that you would like to proceed with seeking proposals for the operation of the plant in case the sale referendum goes down again. In your packet is a timetable I put together. The procedures we have to follow are almost as complex as they are for selling the plant.
Right.
There are two differences. One, it doesn't go out to public referendum, and the second is it's an RFP rather than an RFB. So after we get the proposals, then the next step is to negotiate a contract with the chosen contractor. So in there, what this would require is that adoption of a resolution authorizing the notice of intent to be adopted at the next meeting. So if that's okay with all of you, I will prepare it for the next meeting. We really don't have a whole lot of time because, as I said, it's a long, drawn-out process, very similar to the process we have to follow for trying to sell the plant.
And you're doing the work on this?
I'm doing the work on
Okay.
this.
Thank
But
you.
there are,
75,000, right?
but there are no, just so I understand correctly, there are no time constraints or deadline dates we have to meet other than our own,
No.
we'd like to get the ball rolling.
No, no, no. If you go through the table that I put in the packet, I quoted from the statute. We have to have public hearings, we have to publish notices, then we have to send it down to DEP for their approval.
I understand that, but it's not like it has to be in by September 1st every year, or you have to...
Oh, no,
wait
no,
till
this
next-
would be a longer-term contract.
No, I understand. It's just that the steps...
Well, we have to do it this year, because right now we're under an emergency contract with Veolia.
Gotcha.
So in order to meet,
Okay,
in
thank
order
you.
to have it in
Thank you.
place January 1, we have to follow it
Thank you.
now.
Okay.
All right, so, any of a problem with that, anybody?
Starting to work.
Yes, no, Jack's starting to work.
Not
All right.
at all.
Okay, thanks. I'll have to
Jack,
for the
knock
next meeting.
yourself out.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, consent agenda resolutions, Jack. The first one was it 19-127? Jack, provide details on that before we get into the rest of the,
Well, if any member's going to vote no on that, we have to pull it out of the consent agenda anyway. So maybe I can fill in the details when we get to it as a separate item then.
Okay.
all right.
It is 127, yes.
So we'll pull out 127. So now we'll, aside from 127, anybody have any questions, comments on 19-119 through 19-129?
I'll make a motion, move consent agenda items 19-119 through 126, 19, 128, and 129, as stated in the agenda.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Committeeman Maringolo?
Yes.
Committeeman Ray?
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Patricia?
Yes.
And Mayor Dorsey?
Yes. All right, now we'll move on to 19-127. Jack, take that over.
Yes, this is a resolution retaining an LSRP, that's a licensed site remediation professional, which is a DEP term, and authorizing a professional services contract. I may as well read the whole thing. Whereas NJDEP in a November 26, 2018 letter to then Mayor Guy Pazurcia directed the township to retain a licensed site remediation professional, LSRP, in connection with unresolved environmental issues at the township sewage treatment plant. And I'd like to point out that these unresolved issues are 29 years old. They go back to the expansion of the plant in the late 80s and early 90s. Whereas the township has obtained proposals from 3 LSRPs, and whereas after reviewing the proposals, the Township Committee has determined that Brennan Environmental, Inc. of Summit, New Jersey is best qualified to assist the township in this matter. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee as follows. 1, the mayor and clerk are authorized to sign a professional services agreement with Brennan Environmental, Inc., subject to the following terms and conditions. A, term not to exceed 1 year. B, compensation $14,750 in accordance with Brennan Environmental's April 5 proposal. Amount not to exceed $20,000. That's because it's really an hourly contract, and that was an estimate. Miscellaneous, the form of the contract is subject to the approval of the township administrator and the township attorney. The rest of it is boilerplate. It will be charged to budget line item 272019 027 04552 00576. I didn't know it was going to be that long.
So Jack, just to give a little bit of history as to
Yes.
why we're talking about this. Basically, somebody from the township called the DEP and basically lodged a complaint about something that happened 29 years ago. Is that the way I understand it?
That's our suspicion. DEP will not reveal any details. I can tell you that Mr. Ray, Mr. Pazurcia, and I met with 4 representatives of DEP at my office, including the section chief and various other people from various divisions in DEP. It was, they basically said, we know we dropped the ball. This is 29 years old. We don't have an NFA in our file, and you, the township, apparently don't have one in your file because they're 29.
NFA is
No further action letter. There are various documents in there. We sent an Oprah request down to them, and their file is skeletal at best at this point in time. but their position is that the onus is on us to comply, even though, in my opinion, the township, I'm sure, complied with all DEP requirements back in the early 90s. What happened was asbestos was discovered on the job site the first day. The contractor was put off the job. He had to demobilize.
This is 29 years ago.
This is in 1989. The township hired a firm, Environmental Engineering, Inc., who were in South Orange at the time. They went in and worked with the DEP, and after several months, they were authorized to have the contractor return to the job site. As I recall, the price was doubled as a result of all this. But as I can say at the meeting, the township, prior to this, the township committee didn't know whether they were going to fight it or comply with this directive we received. But I think after leaving the meeting, the consensus was that it's probably cheaper to comply than it would be to fight it.
So somebody calls the DEP on the hotline, complains about this. Now we are forced to hire an LSRP, investigate this, and spend money. Our choice is to do that or to fight the DEP in court.
Correct.
And your recommendation is that the less expensive way out of this is to hire the LSRP and do the investigative work, but we don't know what we don't know yet.
That's correct.
And this is my worry, right? We're not going to get judged by the environmental standards of 29 years ago. We're going to get judged by the environmental standards of today.
Right.
So if we bring this guy in and he finds something that might have been fixed but wasn't fixed to the standards of today, we are screwed, possibly in the millions of dollars.
Well, I'd hold off on making that
Well,
less.
no, the high,
Well, it's whatever it is.
The cost of the sewer plant doubled, right? So the exposure level here is significant. The second that guy comes in and does an investigation. And, you know, I said it before, I'm a little tired of getting bullied around and rolling over. So you know, from my perspective, I would much rather go to the mat in the court over something 29 years old.
Yeah, the only,
Like that there's no way they would have let construction continue if we weren't compliant.
That's a policy decision, and it's a decision for all of you to make, and I have no recommendation as to it. The other factor here is that the township is going out to bid to sell the plant. And if there's pending litigation, it's probably going to kill that whole process. It's a decision for you all to make, but I just wanted to point out.
Well, but
That's one of the ramifications.
But, and let's put the flip side, right? Not litigating will not preclude us from being financially accountable for the remediation, whether the plant sells or not.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So the plant sells, and then they discover that it needs remediation, and we have to pay X. We have to pay X, whatever it is,
But the
for
thing
something we don't own anymore.
right.
That's
Yeah, but we
correct.
were always the guilty party, right? And that's
I
the
understand that,
law.
but we don't own it anymore. It's-
Right.
Right,
But-
it's a little bit different when you have to pay for that thing that's sitting in your driveway while it's still sitting in your driveway, and having to pay for it after somebody's driven it off.
I told the people from DEP this whole thing is unconscionable.
Yeah, several
In my
times.
opinion, it is, but,
Yeah.
so it's up to you
Because
all
I mean,
to decide.
because I think their view is that they don't have anything in the file as far as a no further action letter is concerned. We don't have it, so therefore, without that, it didn't happen. And it's hard to argue with that, especially when it's DEP.
Other than the fact that construction was allowed to continue. And
It's a-
by definition, construction would never have been allowed to continue until that site was remediated to their standards.
Well, I
Period.
think-
That's just the
Jack-
way it worked.
Jack, I believe there was they wanted us to enter into an agreement, right?
Yes.
And that was they said that they didn't get a reply to that agreement, and so it went straight into a cold case file.
We actually sent an OPA request down to DEP back in November. And we received their file, which didn't contain a whole lot. Much of it was irrelevant to this whole issue. It had to do with a 1972, I think, application to have a leaf composting plan approved. There was all kinds of extraneous stuff in there. There were some interesting things. There was a letter to Jerry Testa, who was Public Works Director at the time, with respect to the oil tanks, saying no action is needed. It wasn't an NFA, technically, but it said, we're not going to take any further action on this. They didn't care. They said there's not an NFA letter. Since then, the mayor has gotten an email from
DEP.
Flug
Yeah, Ms. Flug
at the DEP,
After meeting with her Monday.
stating that that issue's resolved. We're only talking about the asbestos. But at the meeting, the woman, Faith Dobry, pulled out a letter from January, I think it was, of 1992, addressed to the township saying, we want you to enter into an agreement. So we said, it's not even addressed to anyone. Was it sent certified mail? She said, no. I said, did you ever follow up and call the township and say what's going on? And they said, no, we put it in the inactive file, where it sat for 29 years.
And this letter, by the way, was not in the results of the Oprah request.
That's correct.
So they're, right, they're not finding everything, they're pulling the stuff out that suits them. I just can't.
I mean, the downside, and again, the decision is yours, not mine. We could be subject to fines and penalties and other things.
Yeah,
in addition
no,
to
not could, would.
Yeah, they made that
The
clear.
director said we would start being fined immediately.
Unless you take action against them. Can they fine you if we bring an action against them?
they could fine us, and we could move to set aside the fines. But the problem is we could lose
Yeah.
Understood.
and have the cost of litigation and the penalties and fines and the cost of cleanup.
Anyway,
Right,
delay
and,
2 years.
yes, and the other stuff.
understand your frustration.
But I'm tired of making that
Yeah,
decision to try and
to that
avoid
point,
the other risk.
And by the way, Cornell, to your point,
just-
I hear you. I'm tired of getting bullied.
It's the
Yeah,
straw that
I
broke the
understand.
camel's
Yeah,
back.
well, it's the wrong straw.
I know.
You know,
I know.
it's one thing to get bullied by a contractor that might have screwed up an installation of a
Whatever,
pump,
of whatever,
pump station.
yeah.
It's another thing. I've often made the joke, but it was never a joke to me. In the state of New Jersey, you've got local elected officials, you've got county officials, you've got assembly, you've got senate, you have the governor, and then you have the real boss, the
Bureaucracy,
DEP.
yep.
And this is not a fight we're going to win.
They have a whole stable of DAGs, Deputy Attorney
and for
Generals.
whoever called, I'll say on the
Attorney
record, for
General.
whoever called that hotline, think about what you did.
Screwed us.
Screwed 8,800 people.
Yeah.
So whoever called that hotline, and I have a pretty darn good idea who it was.
Seeing that, any more discussion on this topic? No, so it looks like we have to move forward. Either way, hiring an LSRP, at this point, you have no choice.
That's right, and we could change our strategy after the LSRP is retained.
The thing to remember, though, is once you hire the LRSRP,
You're
any
opening the-
findings they
Everything-
report.
everything-
That's right.
They must report to the state.
Everything is record. There's
Yeah,
no-
that's
there's
right.
no turning back once you do this.
All right, so,
Somebody needs to make a motion.
motion to, move forward, resolution 19-127.
Correct.
Second. No, oh,
Who made the motion?
so made.
Oh, okay, who's second, anyone?
Yeah.
Second.
You're allowed to make motions, Matt.
Oh, I am?
Yes,
That's
because you're a
fine.
voting member.
All right.
Fine by me.
One moment, please. Fix my notes. Committeeman Maringolo.
Yes.
Committeeman Ray.
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler.
No.
Deputy Mayor Patricia.
Yes.
And Mayor Dorsey.
No.
Passes 3-2.
All right, next order of business. Next.
No.
Oh.
I think it's.
First, we have an introduction of ordinance 434-19, ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank. Who wants to explain that?
This is just the standard ordinance that we do every year. Basically, anything that we have spent under 2% goes into a cap bank, that if you ever have to exceed 2% in the future, you can use that cap bank to increase taxes without going to a public vote.
It's procedural, there's no money spending involved.
Nope.
There's no, this is the budget.
Nope,
It's-
we do it every year.
And we will not be using it.
Oh, my goodness.
and we will
Cornell,
not
are you
use
going to vote yes on this?
Okay. A motion to approve this ordinance.
So
If
moved.
you phrase the questions differently.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Committeeman Maringolo?
Yes.
Committeeman Ray?
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Patricia?
Wait, the clown's just departed. Yes.
And Mayor Dorsey?
Yes, ma'am. All right, next, ordinance 435-19, ordinance concerning sewer user rates and amending chapter 22 of the Township Code entitled Sewers.
I'm looking, no, this is, sorry, let me find the percentage. I gotta bring up my file.
Cornell. Here it is. Cornell, bottom line.
11.7? 4?
12%?
Yeah, think I got a slightly different number, but okay.
So.
That's fine, you can go with that, it's close enough, yeah.
Okay. Since the establishment of the sewer utility, the governing body has to set the rate every year. As they've talked about for a long time, we need to continually fund the sewer operation. And this year, the rates have been set, and the increase is approximately, well, it is 11.74%.
And what would the rate have been if we were,
I got it at 9.4 based on my spreadsheet, but we can go with that, that's close enough. So the highlights of what happened here, so if you guys recall the spreadsheet, the big funding options spreadsheet.
With the colors.
With all the pretty colors and nice lines for you last year, right? We took a decision to start building a cap bank, and we're continuing to do that. In last year's projection, I had forecasted that we would have already actually borrowed the 7.2 million we approved last year, and we would be paying $400,000 a year on interest, and we would already be spending about $146,000 in chemicals for phosphorus. As you're aware that did not occur, so therefore we're not incurring those expenses this year. So the uplift is significantly less than what I had projected for this year. But make no mistake, this is simply a deferral, right? You're still gonna be next year 14%, the year after 18%, and the year after that 21%, before it starts flatlining.
Okay, do me a favor, so say this is in fact 12. Next year, how much?
14,
So 26, and then you said
18,
26, okay, so 44.
21, on top of the original 20 and change.
Right, but my,
It's 100%.
By the way,
time all is said and done.
from the beginning, my only concern is, we had talked about trying to straight line it, and I understand what you're saying, so we're foregoing it just a little bit with the, it's still gonna be 100% over the life of the increase, from the beginning of the increase.
Right.
But my question to Jack really is, part of the reason for the timing of the increases were both to comply with fair share and with the DEP requirements. I don't know that we have that 1 year grace. I get what you're saying.
No,
Cornell.
this is past, right? This
Yeah,
is, we're
we
still
haven't
working
borrowed the
through
money.
this, right? That there's a significant number of permits that need to take place that just procedurally have taken that amount of time.
Okay.
With the DEP's involvement. So this is not like we're stalling or anything like that. It's just like the
So
process.
Jack, and that's why I'm saying, Jack, you don't think we'll get in any,
I don't think so. We're not dragging our feet.
No,
We're acting
no.
in good faith and proceeding as quickly as we can.
I will say this, Colonel, you and I have talked
We
about this.
just approved the filing the permit application in the
Fair.
consent.
You and I have spoken about this offline. My preference would be to take the 4-year number, divide it by 4, and do it that way. But I think 12% is close enough to 15%. So I mean, I'll defer to the others on this.
My next question for Cornell, you might be able to answer this. Let's say, for example, SRP comes in and finds you have to do a massive remediation, that's gonna drive up those numbers even more, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, it would.
So
So
That would be next year.
at the end of 2019, we will have, if these rates get approved, at the end of, and everything goes perfectly, not counting, people don't pay their taxes or recoupment of last year's non-payment, right, taking all that extra stuff out, we'll have $1.05 million in the bank, in the sewer bank, to use for capital improvements. The target is to do the capital improvements in the Remington and Vernick study, or whatever we might need at that particular time, right? We're not deciding the piece of equipment, just the funding source. That could be $1 million to remediate asbestos, and then we defer the other stuff, or we may say do another $1 million.
So what you're saying is that the rates could actually be more, right? Right now, we're basing the rates on not knowing
We're basing the rates on what we know.
right, but these rates could actually go up, and it could be significant based on what the LSRP finds.
Yes,
Right. And that's
which was my fear of doing the whatever it is, LSRP. Because it could be $50,000, it could be $10 million. I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's an unknown. So the point is that these rates could be substantially.
Right, but keep in mind, by the time the LSRP report comes back, right, you're talking about rates next year.
Oh yeah,
not
yeah.
this year.
No,
not gonna get better.
I'm fine with
And
it.
by the way,
I'm
with
fine with the
the
rate this
by
year.
the way,
It's the
you're going to
forecast.
pay that anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if you sell the plant, you're going to have to come up with that money.
But
I
it wouldn't
get
be
that.
on a 5-year budget.
It wouldn't be
on a-
part of
yeah.
this.
It could-
This
yeah,
this is
it-
going to be something
Yeah,
that,
I get.
That's right.
I get that, but
Yep.
but if we don't sell, then there could be what we forecast. Plus-
there might or might not be, right? There's a debate to be had about the event occurred before it was a utility.
But we have to
And all
find
the
the money somewhere.
taxpayers should pay.
Right, but
I-
I mean,
no,
but
I-
that's, but I mean,
Fair
the thing
debate.
is, right, that the money has to be found somewhere, right? Whether it comes from the whole taxpayer base or just the sewer users.
Yes,
Gotta get paid.
yep.
All right, so, what are we doing now? Oh, motion to approve this ordinance.
So moved?
Second.
Committeeman Maringolo,
Reluctantly, yes.
Yeah,
Committeeman Ray,
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler,
I'm with him reluctantly, yes.
Deputy Mayor Paserchia,
Yes.
and Mayor Dorsey.
Yes.
And we put a reluctant-
Next topic, ordinance 433-19, establishing miscellaneous police regulations, supplementing and amending Chapter 3 of the Township Code entitled Police Regulations. This is the municipal court ordinance that we proposed, the different machinations of it, and now it's up for a vote today. Any questions, comments?
This is just way too broad. Like, I read 316 number 1, and the way I read that, you can get a ticket for picketing.
You have a First Amendment right to all that.
Yes, you do, but according to the ordinance, you could still get a ticket for it and then have to go to court and prove that your First Amendment rights are being violated.
There are, I was in 3 municipal courts in less than a week, 3 different ones. And almost every single court I go to, I'm all over the state, has ordinances like this. So it's not just to our town. If you go down the shore, any of those shore towns have these. I mean, I had a client that had $1,000 cup of gin and rum and coke one day, a $1,000 solo cup it cost him. But that's what these ordinances are for. I mean, the kid literally was drinking in public and he wasn't supposed to, but that's what happened.
So why does he not get a drinking in public ticket? I mean, there's laws for that.
Yes, and then you have a 2C violation on your record.
Okay, then you've got a 2C, then change the laws. I'm not here,
That's what this is gonna.
I'm
So-
not here to circumvent the state regulations regarding bad behavior.
So, but Mayor, am I
Yes.
right that this ordinance would essentially give the municipal judge some latitude and it would help the it would help the residents.
Long before the judge even gets it, there'd be latitude. That's the
Right.
point.
It gives the prosecutor an opportunity to allow the guy to plead down so he doesn't have to do any work, and they just collect the citation fee.
Correct.
That's what it does.
Correct. And if you get cited
And-
for...
And I'm not, like, if you're arrested for shoplifting, get proven for shoplifting, and you didn't shoplift. Like, I'm not going to give you a disturbing the peace ticket because you shoplifted.
Well, let me give you an example. Your third shoplifting, you're going to jail. That's what the statute says. So let's say you did 2 in your 20s and do 1 now at your age. All right? You've been good. Third 10s, you're going to jail if you're found guilty. You belong in jail?
That's not my job to fix that law.
I'm just telling you, that's how it works. All right, I'll open...
Write your assemblyman.
No.
You know, I appreciate where Cornell's coming from, and on, you know, philosophically, I agree with him, but in the real world,
I'm more worried about the misinterpretation of this and what it
I
allows
understand.
people to do. And yes, you're probably right, it will get thrown out if it hits a court, if somebody gets a ticket for picketing. But you know what? That person has to spend his time going to court, that person has to spend money to get a lawyer, all to prove his innocence for a right that he has.
I understand. But Jack, this wasn't, the wording is not on a whim. This is kind of mirrored off of.
It's
what-
plagiarized from another town.
Right. And I hear you, Cornell, you know, if this is one of those debates, if you're in college, I'd probably argue with you. But it's the judge, our chief, and our one experienced person in this regard is Matt. And it makes sense in that context. I agree with you. You're right. And if this were a debate team, I think we'd win.
So
But
then
this
why
isn't
are
a
you
debate
voting
team.
the other way?
Because I live in the real world.
Brian, you have anything? Bruce?
Nothing.
I'm open to public now. You have your 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Introduce yourself.
Charles Arenowitz, Millington.
Thank you.
This ordinance about annoyance, I spoke to Chief Naga earlier and I said, you know, I come here twice a month on Wednesdays and I get annoyed. I said, will you issue some summonses to the 5 people in front of me? I had a couple tonight where we're talking about spending this money about open space, and we didn't go to the Open Space Advisory Committee for advice. No one knows whether or not who funded the snack shack at the Little League field. I can tell you this. My wife was one of the 3 people that worked that snack shack for 2 or 3 years, and I went up to Morristown to buy the candies that we sold that we got our profit on.
No,
The
we're talking
point
about the
is,
ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, annoyance, this ordinance doesn't need to be voted on tonight. I agree there needs to be plea deals, but not in this manner. I encourage you to vote against this ordinance tonight and come up with a better deal for plea bargaining. I have three attorneys sitting in front of me here. We've got 84,000 attorneys in this state. The 3, well, who's the 4th one? Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, Nancy. We have 4 attorneys here. We've got 84,000 in the state. Do not pass this annoyance resolution as a plea bargain. You can come up with something better. Thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor, and I hope I made my 3-minute deadline tonight.
Under 90 seconds. Good job.
Thank you.
Hi, Karen Maletta. I actually think this is the worst example of government overreach, and it will be weaponized. People will know it exists and will use it to say some activity somebody's engaged in that may be lawful. You'll have a lot of calls, police officers coming out, having to check things out because of this. And I strongly urge you to vote against it. It is unnecessary. And the other thing I want to say is that this is the United States of America. We believe in the right for people to self-govern. They have personal responsibility here. That's what we should encourage. This is the exact opposite of that. It is the worst kind of ordinance because it assumes the worst of people and we should be able to self-govern ourselves and not need an ordinance that doesn't define what annoying behavior is, but yet creates this big black hole that anything can be put into it and defined as annoying. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that comment on this ordinance?
Tom Groscuff, Gillette. Thank you for hearing us. I think I'm just reiterating what these people are saying, but when you have such nebulous words as annoy or insult, perhaps this sweater annoys you. I know I annoy my wife every day. This chief, there you go. We have enough laws. There's got to be ways for learned people who are attorneys and the prosecutor to get together and find something else to plea bargain it down to. We don't need another ordinance, on private property. So whose private property? My private property? If I put a sign on my private property that the neighbor across the street doesn't like and finds it annoying, perhaps supporting one of you folk, do I get a ticket for that? Isn't that my free speech? That was, made kind of high on the list of things we have the right to do. This flies right in the face of it. And how do I know if I'm frightening somebody? It's Halloween. Boo! Oh, guess what? There's another ticket. It's too much. It's too restraining on our personal freedoms. Please do not vote for this. Please vote against it.
Thank you, Mr. Grosskopf. Any other members of the public like to comment on this ordinance? Seeing none, I will close it to the public. Any further discussion from members of the committee? Got down left side, Bruce, Cornell. I like to comment. I actually live in this world from a litigant point of view, and there is reasons for this that many of you don't understand or luckily you don't have to be exposed to this. But if you did a survey of the defense bar that goes to criminal court and municipal court on a daily basis, they would all be heavily in favor for this. And so would you if one of you or one of your relatives or children had a similar situation. As I said, I've said this in the past. Far Hills, the hunt, as I call it, rich white kids behaving badly. They have, I can't tell you how many summonses they issue out there. The biggest one they have is that they've issued everybody urinating in public summonses or disorderly conduct summonses. A lot of these people that go to this, they're professionals. They have professional licenses. There's teachers, there's people with SEC licenses, there's people with law licenses. If they get found guilty of something, they're gonna lose their license. So the point is, Far Hills and other towns, not your driver's license, you could potentially lose your license or lose your job to practice in a certain field. So Far Hills and other towns, namely towns down the shore and urban environments, they have ordinances very similar to this to avoid these problems. So for example, your son or daughter gets a ticket or gets a summons in Far Hills with disorderly conduct. If he or she pleads guilty to it, there's a good chance they might lose their teaching license, hence their job. Now, if they plead guilty to an ordinance violation, they're not going to lose their professional license, which he or she worked years and years for and paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to get. Additionally, for expungement purposes, if you plead guilty or found guilty of a disorderly persons offense, you could go to jail. You could be put on probation. Plus, you're going to have a quasi-criminal record because it's not a crime you're convicted of. It is a disorderly persons offense, which again, if you go to apply for a job, a professional license is going to pop up again. You'd have to get it expunged, and it takes a little while to do. So it doesn't happen automatically, and you'd have to report it. Now, for example, if you went to court yesterday and pled guilty to a local ordinance such as this, you pay a fine and you go home. That's the end of it. It's not on a application. It's not on a professional license. It's gone. And also, this gives the police more leeway. It's not going to be abused because clearly there's gatekeepers in the system. A citizen couldn't come and just file a complaint against you, as Mr. Grofskopf said, because his wife doesn't like his shirt. She would still have to go to the municipal court, and the court administrator and or the judge would have to find probable cause before that complaint could even be signed. So it's not just willy-nilly. It's not going to have the police coming to extra calls, because if there's something going on and somebody calls the police, they're going to come anyway, and if the police realize it's nonsense, they're going to just tell everybody to go home, and that's the end of it. So for the reasons I previously cited, I wholly support this. This is a request from the municipal prosecutor, and I do prosecute municipal court, and believe me, my life would be easier as well if towns would have municipal ordinances, and from the municipal judge, and from the police department. it provides, you think it's going to be abused, but it actually is a way to help people because, as I said, what I said to Cornell is if you get charged of shoplifting, third offense, it could be a pack of gum. You're going to jail. And there's a lot of people, I was in court, as I said.
I fail to see the problem with that.
Okay, so,
I really do.
so Matt,
And, you know, if you know your job has a license that requires you not to do certain things, the really simple answer is don't do certain things.
Well, people didn't do stupid things, I wouldn't have a job. So,
Matt,
it doesn't work that way.
I understand
Matt,
that. And that's why you have a job.
You know, a lot of these things happen, you know, sort of youthful indiscretions, and for that to follow you all throughout your career and damage your career, maybe cause some doors to close. That's I'm in total agreement with this for that reason.
I agree that some of that system is broken. This ordinance is not going to fix the broader scope of that.
The thing is, I don't see a fix for that, and at least in this town, we have something here. I shared a lot of your concerns whenever I first read this, but since talking to Matt especially and kind of understanding a little bit more, I've certainly changed my mind and I'm in favour.
Any other comments from the members here? Seeing none, motion to approve the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Committeeman Maringolo,
No.
Committeeman Ray,
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler,
No.
Deputy Mayor Paserchia,
Yes.
Mayor Dorsey.
Yes. Moving along. Moving along.
the other side.
Resolution 19-130, resolution for conducting annual budget examination.
There's two,
Oh, there's two together?
just so you know, for the motion, I discussed them both together.
Oh, so it's 19-130 about is resolution conducting annual budget exam, and 131, which is introduction of the 2019 budget. Got it.
And that's of both the municipal budget and the sewer utility budget.
Yes, you say so,
Yes,
sure.
that's-
Yes, it
and the
is.
capital-
Okay, yes.
And the capital budget.
And the capital budget as well.
Do you want me to explain this one?
Nancy explained the first one, then you guys can handle the second one?
Which one, the
Well,
budget exam?
the budget exam.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
Go-
okay.
You can do the budget exam, go ahead.
Okay, once every 3 years, I believe it is, the Division of Local Government Services allows municipalities that are fiscally responsible to do their own budget exam, which means that they don't have to send their budget to Trenton and wait for the employees of the Division of Local Government Services to go through your budget and examine it. Basically, they trust you enough to put it together on your own. And so I think it's once every 3 years, you get to do self-examination, and this just says that we agree to do our own self-examination. So what it does is it stops us from having to avoid the delay, because as you can imagine, with 535 municipalities and 21 counties and tons of authorities, the few employees, 20 employees or so down at the division, have to review every budget, so those that are on local exam, they don't have to look at, and so we don't have to wait and delay our adoption until they've approved our budget. So it's a good thing to do when you have the opportunity, and we do.
All right, and now the budget. I'll turn that over to the gentleman to my left.
Thank you. I'll give you you can look at the detailed line items, but I'll give you some of the highlights. So on the municipal side, our appropriations for 2019 are $15,075,000 and change, which is up from $14,091,777, which is a increase of $985,000 and change. So almost $1 million on the appropriation side. However, that increase is predominantly one time. We are spending this year $1,032,000 in capital projects, that is being paid fully by the operational budget, no borrowing.
Thank you.
So we are not borrowing any money this year. So how we got there is we had a very large surplus this year, abnormally large, in part because of a funds transfer from the tax appeal reserve account that we had that never moved back after we completed the acquisition of the property across the street. We had always, there was a little bit of background history for those that don't know. Prior to us purchasing the property across the street, the owner had a tax appeal for multiple years. We had accrued, I think, $400,000 or $450,000 in anticipation that we were going to lose the appeal and we were going to have to refund that money. We recognized that we had that money when we made the decision to settle at the $4 million acquisition, but we couldn't conduct the transfer mid-year, so we borrowed to pay, but we never looped that money from the reserve back into the budget. That process began last year, and it became surplus this year. So if you look at the surplus number, last year we used $1 million in surplus, and this year we're using $1,980,000. So we had a fairly hefty surplus amount. The one, I'll call it a downside to this year's budget, is in some of the detail on the debt service. So our debt service this year is only $1.3 million, down from $1.7 million. Well, no, it means we're only paying off $1.3 million instead of $1.7 million, because part of how we got to pay that $1 million is by taking that $400,000 and saying, all right, let's not pay off the old stuff, let's just use it to do what's now. The result is that the debt is still there, still needs to be paid off. We're still paying off some debt, obviously, but not to the degree that we were. If you look at our debt and capital from last year, it was about 1945, $1,945,000. This year, it's $2,357,000. So that's an uplift of $411,000. That's the kind of one-time expense for this year, right? Why the appropriation is $1 million higher. It's only going to happen for 1 year. And that leads to the fact that if you take the capital numbers out of the budget, our general appropriation costs, our operating expenses are going up by $574,000 or 4%. So because of various factors, our ongoing operating budget, the things that truly can expect to hit every single year, is going up 4%, which is higher than 2%, but it's being masked by the surplus. I'm just calling that out for what it is.
Just to comment some other numbers for the public here. So last year we raised $9.6 million from taxes. This year we're going to raise $9.7 million and change from taxes. It's a difference of just over 1%, 1.12%. And that's the increase that the municipal portion of your tax bill is going to have. Generally speaking, we have a $15 million budget. Again, $9.7 million of that is raised from taxes. That's about 65% of the budget. The other 35% comes from outside revenue sources. For example, there's a cell tower down at the DPW building. There's 2 operators on that tower. They pay us rent. That's an outside source of revenue. When you look at that $9.7 million that comes from the tax base, the way to lower our taxes is to have more outside revenue sources. So I'm open for any ideas, whether they be crazy or not. We can debate that on how to generate outside revenue. I've suggested to this committee many times we should put a toll over on the Passaic River and charge everybody from Basking Ridge who wants to go to ShopRite so that we can raise some outside revenue and lower our taxes. When you look at your tax bill, though, this is only going to be about 26% of your tax bill. The other larger percentage comes from the school systems, which is going to be 63% of your tax bill. We heard tonight that the high school is 1.7% increase. The local school is talking over a 5% increase. That's going to be the bigger portion of your tax bill. Looking at it another way, the tax dollar. 90% of our tax dollar comes from the residential taxpayer. Only about 9% comes from the commercial tax base in town, right? So there's a bunch of different ways to look at these numbers. What it essentially boils down to is we have a large tax burden that falls to the residential taxpayer because there's not outside sources of revenue nor commercial ratables to rely upon.
And Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the surrounding towns, Chatham is an 80-20 break. Both of the Chathams, and I think Berkeley Heights is 70.
Yeah, I mean, you go up to Hanover where they have Route 10 up there. That's a 50-50 break. A lot of towns are 80-20. We're 90 and 9. We actually get a little bit of money from the federal government for the Great Swamp and our open space. A little less than 1%, but if you round it up, it's 1%. That's kind of how the numbers play out.
They have, Berkeley Heights has a lot more commercial, and it shows.
Right.
So that.
Right, yeah, I mean, the question is, do you want to look like Berkeley Heights?
Exactly, and that's really.
Nothing against Berkeley Heights,
Right,
if
this is a
anybody has
bedroom
fun.
community, and our tax bills are reflective of that.
So,
But generally speaking, we are holding the line at just over 1% increase.
Bruce, over the last 10 years, or Cornell, both of you, I think you already
I
answered.
just pulled that spreadsheet up, so I don't have the answer of the last 10 years. What I was going to say was the Finance Committee, we actually have two different opinions on this. So what we've done is, like I said, some of that surplus has moved into the budget to reduce the impacts to the taxpayer. As much as I'm against high taxes, I see what's coming with capital expenditures on the 6-year capital plan. We're going to have another similar year, if not more difficult year next year. And I am very hesitant to take that surplus out to cushion to a 1% while we can still charge more. I use those words with trepidation. I'm more in favor of leaving that 100,000 in the surplus kitty for next year to help cushion the blows that we're going to hit next year, which would put the increase at 1.9%. So that's really the only differences that we have in the budget, but we presented it this way, figuring you guys would like it. I'm making you aware, and we can take a vote on whether or not to, do you want to take the 100,000 out and cushion the tax flow? Or do we want to prepare a little bit more for the capital that we know is coming next year? We've got one more year to hang on.
Yeah, 2020. The debt falls off
Before,
2020.
that's the last year that it pays is 2020.
Yeah.
So
No, 19.
2021.
21.
21, the
So
last year, what?
in 2020 is the end of a major bond payment, like a $350,000 a year bond payment.
Gotcha.
So if we can hold the borrowing, that's a big step towards pay-as-you-go in 2021, because that money will then be liquid to not pay down debt.
Speaking of that,
Wait, just a comment for the public. We've been trying to hold down the debt and get us to a pay-as-you-go or debt-free municipality. That's what we've been trying to do over the last 5 years. So what he's talking about is a bond payment that's been hovering for 20 years that's ending in 2021. So in 2022, that $300,000 that we pay in interest now becomes available to us in the budget for roads and other expenses and things like that. So that's really what he's talking about.
Yeah, so just to put some context around that, right? The debt service that we have this year.
That was my question.
Is 1.325 million.
Okay.
Right, we have to pay down $1.3 million in old stuff. And I mentioned the number earlier, last year that number was $1.72 million because we've been this whole committee, we've been doing an outstanding job of trying to rapidly pay down as much as we can, right? And, get to a place where we have liquid cash so that, wouldn't it be great to take that full $2 million in cash every year and be able to do capital and not have to pay back debt?
Now,
that would get us pretty far.
So getting back to the fund balance of that 400,000 that he mentioned, or the 100,000 that he mentioned, we currently have $800,000 in fund balance, right? Which is essentially surplus, right? It's just cash sitting there. My opinion is we don't need that much money. I'd rather give it back to the taxpayers. His opinion is let's take 100,000 and hold on to it because we know there's going to be more expenses next year, right? And that's really what our debate was. It was that 100,000, which takes the rate from 1.12 to 1.8 or something like that.
To cushion the blow of borrowing next year, to try and avoid borrowing.
Right.
Yeah,
And I just felt that $750,000 in surplus was more than sufficient.
Well,
and that's been our traditional number, by the way.
Correct. So we don't know how much we're going to generate next year. Right? Is the wild card. Right? It's somewhat an indication of how accurate we budget. Sometimes it's, we get, a FEMA reimbursement.
Right.
Right. This year we had the tax appeal fund. Right. So, next year I think we're due a FEMA money a little bit.
250 sitting out there.
The last two storms that we had.
Right.
So does it hit this year? We don't know. If it hits this year, it comes into surplus for next year.
Yeah.
We don't know when we're going to get it. If we don't get it,
Actually, Cornell, last year I think we took a zero, and I was in favor of actually upping that for the reasons that you.
It was last year wasn't zero.
It was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
But we were like 1% or something.
Yeah, but it was for the exact reasons that you've just stated. I was in favor of taking something there, and this year too. It's been my opinion that the 1.9 would be the prudent thing to do because we really don't know what's going to happen next year, and it'd certainly be nice to have that money there. So that's been my opinion.
No, Cornell, I appreciate it. That's an awful lot of work you put into that, but I think it's a little. No, don't worry, I'll get to Bruce. Because I agree with Bruce, so he doesn't need the compliment up front. It's very conservative what you're recommending, but I lean toward what Bruce is saying because I don't think we need surplus, and I know we've spoken with our auditor on many occasions, and he was comfortable at times even as low as 500. So it's hard to argue with what you said, Cornell. Being conservative is great, but I think this committee has earned the trust of the public because that's why I asked you over the last 10 years. I think the cumulative increase for the municipal budget is about 14%. Does that sound about right?
So if you approve this budget as it is, the increase from 2012 until including this year, total is 10.7%.
That's incredible.
In 2012, the tax base was $9 million.
Yeah, find a town around here.
And now, if this approves, we're at 9.7.
thank you for all your hard work. I know Nancy and Randy were helping out a lot too.
Yep.
Just a couple other highlights, just to put this in real numbers. If your house is valued at basically $500,000, your increase would be about $36 for the municipal tax, and that includes your open space and library taxes. So if this budget passes, and as I said, these are just rough numbers, your house worth $500,000, your bill's gonna go up $36 next year. The capital budget doesn't require any borrowing. I don't know if you mentioned that.
Yes, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay. And the money that in the capital expenditures this year includes paving for 10 roads and equipment for the police, the fire department, and recreation. And then most importantly, as we told you, the sewer increase as of now is almost 12%. So just keep that in mind. And I believe if we sold it in 2016, the rate would be what this year? Zero. So now I had a resident tell me a couple weeks ago this sewer bill, I don't know how, was $1,000. So next year it's going to be add another whatever $100, $110, $115 onto it, and it's not going to make their family happy. So seeing no other comments, I'd like to make a motion to, or somebody make a motion to move this to introduction on May 8th. And then obviously if anybody wants a copy of the budget, they're available at the what? Adoption. Second hearing. All right.
So did you express an opinion on the higher or lower?
Oh, I thought the 1.1% to the 1.1, yes.
Yeah, well, we had two that says
Oh.
go to 1.9.
No, I was
and we
in-
got
I was
two
in
that
Bruce's.
says- Okay, thank you.
I was on the lower tier.
So I'll move 19-130 and 19-131 as stated in the agenda. Is there a date for
May 8th.
May 8th?
Second.
Madam Clerk, if you will.
Committeeman Maringolo,
Yes.
Committeeman Ray,
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler,
Yes.
I got you.
Deputy Mayor Paserchio.
Yes.
And Mayor Dorsey.
Yes. All right. Moving along. Any old business? Yes, sir.
No, actually, so I did want to make one comment about the sewer utility. We kind of didn't give it any attention. The actual operating costs this year are lower than they were last year in terms of operation. The uplift for the rates comes because of capital improvement. But the day-to-day operations, now that this is under an OEM contract and we've in and out all the personnel charges, the day-to-day operation charges are lower than they were.
So Cornell, I mean, I know there was a lot of discussion about the OEM contract, but in actual fact, it's turned out to be cheaper.
From a pure operations,
From the operations
from a pure
perspective.
operational only perspective, it is absolutely cheap.
Right. Okay. I think that's important for the
Yeah,
for the
yeah, and
residents
that's why,
to know.
and that's why I mentioned it.
Yep.
We didn't, I meant to do it earlier and we
Yeah.
got tied up in percentages and great numbers.
New business. I know we have Chief Nogger here. He has an issue to address. Do you not, Chief? Be nice to do it at the microphone, but yes, you do.
I'm sorry, what was the issue?
What was it about? Some notice?
Rave. Oh, yeah.
Oh, some emails or text that went out?
Right, some of the residents reached out. There was an automated alert that came out through our rave alert system, which residents have voluntarily signed up for. The alert came out and basically said your 911 subscription information has expired, you have to renew your account. That caused some alarm amongst the residents, thinking that if they dial 911, that we will not be able to find out who they are or get to them. That is completely inaccurate. This is specifically to the Smart 911 system, which it adds additional layer to 911. You can provide voluntary information, which could help first responders. Dispatchers and first responders don't have access to that information until you actually trigger 911. But you could have information in there such as if there's any disabled persons in your household, if there's any pets, if there's a garage combo that you want us to have upon arrival, an emergency contact for your family. It's completely voluntarily. We don't require it. If you get an alert that says you're expired, they want you to renew your information every 6 months, so it's as fresh or as valid as can be. So 911 is not down. It's operational. Don't be alarmed by that email. There should be a follow-up email from OEM to advise you what I just said, so.
Just a general question on that. Say, for example, I gave them my information, it hasn't changed.
Right.
A year from now, would you still have that access to that information if it came to my house or if I called 911?
They require you every 6 months to go in there and validate it, just say everything looks good. You get that probably with some of your accounts where they say, hey, do you need to update this? Does this look good? Just check off it's good to go and move forward. But you probably would have some changes. Some things are, vehicle license plates, what should be in your driveway, what shouldn't be in your driveway. So it'll come up if you dial 911 and there's a license plate that shouldn't be in your vehicle, it'll come up that it's not one of the plates that you listed. But it's only accessible at the time of emergency. There's no file that a dispatcher or an officer can sit there and sift through to see who's living in your house.
Thank you, Chief.
All right.
Anything else on new business from the committee? Seeing none, announcements. Let's see, we have the Easter egg hunt, Saturday, 10 a.m. The rain date is the following Saturday, the 20th at 10 a.m., so let's hope for some good weather. It's out on Cantor Field over outside there, and it's usually heavily attended, so thank you, Recreation Committee. Next, the street fair, to continue our fun activities, is Sunday, April 14th, then it's 10 to 5? 10 to 5, and Dennis will guarantee good weather as always.
No, not this year.
Oh, whoa! Puxatawny Phils.
Looks like you need to bring a raincoat.
Bring a raincoat just in case, but hopefully...
Unless there's a thunderstorm, we will be on, rain or shine.
They will be on rain or shine. Hopefully it's good weather, or at least doesn't rain so people can come out and enjoy. And as I said last time, Millington Fire Company, the 4th annual comedy night this Saturday. Tickets are still available in advance, $35 or $40 at the door. Doors open at 6:30. They have refreshments served or not?
Refreshments, yes.
Refreshments served. And I'm sure adult beverages as well. That's this Saturday, 6:30 at the Millington Fire Company. We also, the Veterans Annex Open House. This is the old American Legion building for those of you who are aware of where it was. The Elks Club took it over, and they're having a Veterans Annex there, which
The state
sorry.
Elks.
The State
Not
Elks
local
Club
Elks.
took it over. Thank you, Bruce. And it's they renovated the whole inside. You probably won't even recognize it anymore. And it's an annex where they're going to have different programs and supplies they can store for veterans, that furniture, things like that, help people get on their feet once they get out, and self-sufficient. So it's a great program. That is Saturday the 27th from 12 to 3 down on Union Street. So please stop in and see the building and support the program. And finally, the Fishing Derby, 8 o'clock to 1 a.m. the Saturday the 20th at Sterling Lake. That's the PBA Fishing Derby. It's usually a fun time for the kids. They do have prizes and T-shirts, and it's free to the residents. 8 to 1 at the lake, the non-swimming side, of course. And then on Sunday, this Sunday after the street fair at 5 to 7, they're having an interfaith ceremony at the shrine. The refreshments are served there as well. It's sponsored by the Watchung Hills Clergy Association, which is clergy members from Jewish people, Islamic people, as well as Christians, and it should be a good event. So if you're looking for to get your church on, Sunday at 5 at the shrine.
Matt, just one more if I could.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't have a chance to give it to you earlier. Monday, April 15th, Knights of Columbus are having a blood drive at St. Vincent de Paul, 2 to 8. Please, if you can, go. It's obviously a wonderful cause, and I'll see you there. 2 to 8 p.m.
On Monday?
Monday.
Thank you, sir. All right. Now we open up to the meeting to the public. 3-minute remarks. Anything you want.
Charles Arano, it's Millington. I'll start off with 3 comments and then 3 questions. Regarding the budget, if we don't have reserves for the things like the fire trucks or Cantor Field Park, I strongly suggest we put them in there. Second comment, it's my understanding when we funded Cantor Field, the turf field, we took about $400,000 from the Open Space Fund. This committee said that was going to be repaid, and Mr. Dorsey was very particular about we're also going to get a reserve fund established for replacing that field from oratory. So I assume all those numbers are taking place. Based on some of the discussions tonight, it left some questions in the air. The third comment, we have this lengthy discussion on the open space fund's availability, but no input from the Open Space Advisory Committee. I would think they would come in with a recommendation and the analysis, and you guys would just have to say yes or no. To the questions. 3 questions. Former Mayor Patricia, why did we have to wait 4.5 months to notify the Long Hill taxpayers that we had a letter from the New Jersey DEP?
Potential litigation, okay, you go.
Go. Oh, guess your next question.
Oh,
You'll get them
okay.
addressed, don't worry.
Oh, I worry. Where were our records? And what did we have to give to the DEP regarding this 1989, 1991, 1992 repair, expansion of the sewer plant? Question number 3. Why does a taxpayer have to issue an Oprah request to get a copy of this letter from November that we received on November 29th, 2018? I'm tired of doing Oprah requests. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
I will let Jack address your DEP questions because he's been involved in the process the entire time.
4.5 months.
Mr. Aronowitz, the letter was not disclosed because the Township Committee had to decide how they were going to proceed. It was anticipated litigation, and it also involved contract negotiations with the LSRP. What happened to the records, I can't tell you, but it's 30 years ago. Town halls moved. It's just, as I said, it's unconscionable for a state agency to come after a municipality after 30 years. Your third question, I'm sorry.
Why did I have to
Oprah
Oprah
request.
to get this letter?
That's how the system works. If you want a
Maybe
public
we should
record-
change it, huh?
What's the state law? Again, most of these things are out of our hands.
It's costing me time and your time to respond. I think there's a better way to get the information out.
I agree. Before Oprah, we used to just give out records, but now we have to go through the Oprah process.
Thank you.
Can we change that? Our
Right
approach?
to your legislators. Again.
I said the last meeting, I got tired of beating my head against the wall, okay? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marianne Noonan, and
I'm
I
sorry,
live
can
in
you say
Gillette.
your last name?
Noonan, Noonan. My major question, based on the budget that was discussed, and if we have a surplus, are we going to have capital reserves now for the funding of our case against the DEP?
You mean a lawsuit or to pay for the cleanup?
I think the vote was, excuse me, that we're not having a lawsuit. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
At this time, we're hiring an LRCP which is an engineer.
Correct.
To investigate the DEP's claim against us.
Correct.
So we're doing the investigative process.
Right.
I don't think it precludes us from entering a lawsuit or just cleaning up whatever's there if we find something.
Okay.
Right?
So this is what I'm referring to. Are we going to have some type of capital reserve in place within this budget for purposes of remediation of that site?
So chances are that, I'm sorry, the timing of this, once we get the LSREP, once we get the report back
Right.
and understand what the issues are, we're probably looking at the end of the year, and we can address it in the next budget.
Okay, okay.
If I could further extend on that, right? It all depends on how much that turns out to be. And as I mentioned, in our wastewater forecast, when we set the rates and we set the budget, at the end of this year, after everybody pays their bill, we will have $1 million in a capital fund. The intent is to use that for all the things in the report that we received 2 or 3 years ago of like what needs to be done.
Mhm.
The intent is to use it on those things, but,
Correct.
right, we can reprioritize, future committee can reprioritize those, where that money goes to.
Okay, yeah.
Is $1 million enough? I don't know. I mean,
And just to add on to this, there is funds available from the state, believe it or not, that we potentially could apply for to clean this up. So there's this fund, it's got an acronym HSDRF or something like that, and it's like the Hazardous Site Disaster Relief Fund or something like that. And it's basically a fund that's available to the municipalities to apply for to clean up sites,
Okay.
right? So once we know what we're dealing with, there's a couple of different avenues we can look at for the money,
Okay.
if we need it.
I mean, if you don't mind, it's a little longer than 3 minutes.
No, we interrupted you. Go ahead. That was my fault.
But,
Yeah, we don't count our time.
Okay.
Like soccer.
With reference to that, are we acting upon that, right, to be proactive?
I'm sorry?
Are we acting upon that STDR currently?
LSRP, you mean?
Yeah, to be proactive?
Oh.
She means the grant, I think.
Oh, the
No.
grant.
We don't know what we need yet.
The LSRP does the investigative work. He produces a report, and that report will dictate some, well, will make some recommendations to us as to how to proceed at that point. So
Okay.
at this point in time, we're going to contract with an LSRP. He's going to do the research, and at some point in the future, we'll be talking about this again and the course of action as a result of that report.
Okay.
He is, the LSRP is licensed by the state. And while we hire him and we pay for him, he has to follow a set of, or she has to follow a set of rules set by the state and is obligated to report all his findings to the state. So if he finds a chemical in the ground, he's going to let us know, and he's going to call up the DEP and say, hey, I found a chemical in the ground. Right? That's how that system works. So, which was my hesitation, because once you put the LSRP in there,
It's going to bring out a can of worms.
whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. And just lastly, I know, basically you've stated you spent a couple of months reviewing what has come back to us from the DEP. The initial conclusion is yes, it would be under current law, but do we know if we could have been grandfathered somehow in this process?
Jack, I'm going to have to answer that.
I defer to.
We cannot, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah.
We cannot.
We cannot.
We can't. Okay.
As
Okay.
DEP said, it's good for the environment.
It's good for the environment. Okay.
And
That's a quote, that's not my opinion.
Okay. And was there any type of rebuttal from the committee or
Oh,
legal counsel?
they went down,
There was
Brendan, Guy went down with
we sent
Jack.
the B team down.
And I spoke to a DP, what's Carrie Fluke's position?
Government
She's the
liaison.
government affairs woman I spoke with. She came here Monday and met with us. Actually, we got a little bit off of that. But, I mean, they went down there and they argued with them, but
To no.
To no avail.
No.
No.
They didn't want to hear it.
No.
exactly.
Okay. Okay.
So we sent the whole contingency down there.
I mean, it took 3 months just to get the meeting with them, right?
Yes.
I mean, it was like trying to get a time with them to set this up was the bulk of the process.
Is dated November, but we didn't meet with them until what, 2.5 weeks ago?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the delay was on their side, not on
Not
ours.
ours.
Okay. And what would the approximate legal costs have been if we did pursue litigation?
The cost of what?
If we fought, what would,
Oh,
could be hundreds
It's
of
hard
thousands.
to say, we'd have to hire expert witnesses. Yeah, could be hundreds of
Environmental
thousands.
It's
Okay.
not a cheap exercise,
No.
in fairness.
and then if you lose, you still got to pay to clean it up anyway.
And we'd be subject to penalties and fines in addition to the cleanup costs if we lost.
And that was made clear to us by the DEP when we met with them,
Yes.
that we would be subject to those immediately.
Okay. Well, thank you. Also, Mayor, just want to point out with the alerts for the 911.
Oh, yeah.
You will get an email, and all you have to say is yes.
I just deleted it. I thought it was spam, but I.
And I want to thank you for putting this into effect. And I hope once the 911 gets started, it'll also include all services. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Noonan. Any other members of the public like to make any comments or questions? Seeing, Mr. Grosskopf, you coming up?
That's an ugly sweater.
Does your wife let you out with that?
Good evening once again. I guess two questions for you, please. One on the budget. I remember when it was December, January, there was a $350,000+ surplus for the parking. In fact, it was even reported in the Echo Sentinel. I don't see anything on here showing that. Is there some kind of other? Is it part of something else?
No, the parking utility is in there. It's not 360, it's 160.
It's on page 13.
Well, that's what was reported by the auditor last December or
No,
January.
but then
It was closer to $400,000.
But we spent money against that.
For parking? Because I thought that was
Well,
earmarked.
we repaved Gillette.
Yeah. And then we're going to do something in Sterling. is that-
We still have to repave Sterling,
And
and
the
then
lights
there's,
in
and the drainage project.
That's right.
with Sterling has to be handled also.
Yeah.
But that hasn't,
That hasn't hit
that
there
hasn't
yet.
come out yet. I don't
But,
remember
yeah,
it being
It wouldn't be
that high.
absent. I see zero there, under surplus for 18.
What did you said you read it in the Echoes?
So let me
It was-
just
it was
say
also
that
reported.
there was, what's in this resolution, the CFO had some difficulty in transferring this into a format that fits into the agenda. That could definitely, we found some other typos. So your probably best bet is to look at the actual budget once it's on the website, which should be, in the next couple of days.
I also remember the auditor was here and presented, think it was December or January, and he had mentioned that it was between 350 and 400, so, and Echo Center caught up on that. My other point, and I made this at the last meeting I attended, was around the dog park, and I know you're going to take this up in 2 weeks, I may not be able to be here, so I thought I'd just bring this up now. You have about 400 homes or homeowners, or dog owners in this town that voted yes. The others would have voted no, the three, some almost 400. So that leaves about 90% of this town that, well, maybe 80% of this town that didn't even get a chance to vote whether they would want to spend their tax dollars on a dog park. So we're talking about 62.5% roughly of the dog owners who would like it. That's nice, and that's a small exclusive club in this town. Most people don't have dogs.
This town has resources of many different types, that not everybody uses everything.
Okay.
Right? There's an opportunity cost in there, right? We can't put Little League fields only, right? And ignore other sports. We can't ignore passive. We can't ignore fire, but do first aid, right? So, and I would hope that's a measurement not so much of people that want a dog park, but would use a dog park, right? We know the non-dog owners are never going to use a dog park, right? So I know they're going to say no, because most of them, because they're not going to use it. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have it. And I'm not claiming support for the dog park at either location, but just to advocate, we have to look at the needs of
Where would the
various
fee-
different
Where would the fees come to support that dog park? Like, okay, now I know my
knowing
bugaboo is
this
the
committee
lights.
from the dog licenses.
Okay, that's going to fund it?
I don't know how much money's in there.
I mean, I believe that's where the money would come from, right? The fees.
Well, it depends which option you choose.
You also,
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
but
gotta get voted first.
Or
Right.
it's got to get voted first, and the committee has to
I know it's gonna be
determine.
part of the discussion.
It could come from there, it could be a hybrid, like our recreation programs are somewhat of a hybrid. They're largely self-funded, but there's still some costs that we have as a town that we just consider the opportunity costs.
Some towns charge an additional fee.
I was just going to ask that.
$20 a
gonna-
year or
yeah.
something.
But as I brought up last meeting, and I hope you consider this at your meeting, personally, I love dogs, and a dog park would be fine if it's people there are responsible, cleaning up after themselves, not leaving chairs for the next weekend. And if you think about it, when are you going to go? Spring and summer. So how many weekends are there? Is it worth our resources? I don't know. But I would just hope that somebody would be responsible for their Long Hill dogs, they're not Basking Ridge dogs or Berkeley Heights dogs, and that we have a lovely park for everybody. So if it's clean, hey, have a good time. So please, take that into consideration, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So,
Any other members of the public wish to say anything, address any issues? Seeing none, I make anybody a motion to
So moved.
adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you, everybody, for coming
Thank
out.
you, everybody.